there's good news to you, I'll tell how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, poultry worker Mona Darby talks union. Scott Heric talks Union Lee. Joy Silk is making a comeback. We speak to gubernatorial candidate Tim James and more on today's program. It's a good one. If you want to be part of the program today, we've got a phone number. And we're going to be getting the line open here pretty soon. I think Adam is still working on that. You can call or text 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail throughout the week, and we might answer it on the program. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us online. We are anywhere. You can find anything online. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. Wherever you find your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. If you want to become a sustaining member of the program, you want to make a one-time donation, or buy our new hat, then you can go to tvlr.fm. TVLR.fm is our website. You can find all that stuff there, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Just an update on the hats. We were hoping that they would be shipped by mid-April, which is now. It is April 16th, and they have not shipped yet. They said I talked to the folks, and they said that there was a production delay, supply chains and whatever else, and that they will be shipped on the 20th to the place where they're going to get the patches, and then they'll be shipped out after that. So hopefully looking at being on your heads by the end of April, beginning of May. That's what we're looking at now. It's a really cool hat, though. You should get it. You should get it for sure. USA and union made, unlike what you're going to get from, some political candidates who have their Make America Great Again hats made in China, or even socialist. Like, it's crazy that there are, but this happens. There are like socialist political commentators or like political organizations or whatever that don't get their crappy merch union made. Why would you do that? Why would you outsource the production of things that you're going to put your name on to like slave labor? Why would you do that as a socialist, as like a pro-worker person? Obviously, Republicans are going to do it because they don't care about that kind of stuff. But like, why would you do that? I don't know. That's a bee in my bonnet for sure. Really irritates me. If you're listening and you and you found stuff like that, or you do stuff like that, let's stop doing that. Also, if you're a member of a union, you should get your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to me for more details on that. So, so our first segment today, we're talking the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. They were founded in 1937. Today, they represent more than 60,000 workers in a wide range of industries, including but not limited to retail, grocery stores, poultry processing, dairy processing, cereal processing, soda bottlers, bakeries, healthcare, hotels, manufacturing, public sector workers, sanitation, highway workers, warehouses, building services, and distribution. The Mid-South Council represents over 4,000 workers in Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Virginia, and Tennessee. Most recently, the Mid-South Council and the RWDSU as a whole has become famous for their campaign to organize Amazon in Alabama, although their recently successful campaign at REI in New York has made a few headlines as well. But, as you just heard, this union is made up of so many other workers that are fighting bosses day in and day out across the country and right here in Alabama. So we wanted to highlight some of the other work that this union is doing right here in our backyard. So we've got Josh Brewer, who is a return guest. He's a staff representative for the union and poultry worker at Wayne Farms in Decatur, RWDSU Local 451 President Mona Darby. Y'all, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jacob, how you doing?
Hello, everybody.
Doing good, doing good.
Jacob,
I really appreciate your time.
members.
So, Mona, let's start with you. You've been working in the poultry plant there in Decatur for over 30 years. So can you talk to us about the sort of work that y'all do there? Like, give us a day in the life sort of thing. Like, what would I, as a poultry worker, do if I got a job at Wayne Farms tomorrow?
Okay, I will start at the front of the line. The line leader, it would be a cone loaders, be the first one. Then you go to the leg cutters. They'll be cutting the legs off. Then you got the shoulder cutters. We call them breast cutters. They cut that off. Then you go next will be the wing cutters. They cut the wings off from the breast. Then the next you'll get to it would be the breast rollers. They the one roll the breast meat out, pull the skin off and throw it on the belt. So that's how you get your fillet of breast. Then the next one down the line would be your tender cutters. They cut the tenders off. And then the next would be down the line would be the chimney clipper. They clip the white tips off, and then you get your bone poppers. They pop the bones out so you can get the thigh bones out, so you can get the bone, because we run boneless thighs. And the next would be the knuckle cutters. The knuckles will come off the thigh meat. Then you go down, and it'll be the right side breast cutter. Right side thigh boners and the left side thigh boners. So you go down the line, it would be the left side. You cut that off, and the knuckles off as well. Then they pull they'll pull your tendons off, throw it on the belt. Tendons go to one side, breasts go to one side, legs go down in the hole, wings go on the wing segment. So sometimes they be whole wing, sometimes they be split wings. Then you get down to the end, that would be your oyster cutters. That's the thigh meat, because we run boneless meat. And so that's where they throw it off. And me, I'm at the end, that would be the final inspector. On the breasts, I will get the bone, make sure if the breast inspector don't get them out, the final inspector's supposed to try to get everything out before they get in the combo or either stack on the boxes.
Right. So there's a lot of cutting there. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. How much of that is like mechanized versus how much of the cutting, like, do you actually have to do like with your hands, so to speak?
Everything they do, you have to do with your hands. You do nicer scissors. Now that we are in the last month, I say a couple months, they have put machines in, but we still running the lines as well. So the machines do a lot of the cutting because we couldn't get enough employees in to get all the products out. So they started putting machines in. But you always gonna have knives and scissors. Everything there gonna be on the line. For you on the line, you're gonna have to use knives and scissors.
Wow. So what about the rate of production? You're doing all this stuff. How many, if I was a thigh cutter, how many thighs would I have to cut in like a minute or an hour?
We're on the line, you're running 34, 35 bursts a minute. So you just have to average it up.
Yeah, it's moving.
It's moving that.
Yeah.
If you're cutting with knives and scissors, it's running 34, 35 bursts a minute. If you're on the machine is running 150 barrels a minute.
See, and so I'll jump in there, Jacob. That's the difference between the reason why it's long been a job that was manually done, as Mona said, with scissors and knives, is because the machines, a bird is not an exact, it's an animal, right? So there's no way to make the exact specifications like you would other automated factories. And so the wastefulness from a machine cutting a bird is really high. A lot of that meat goes to waste. And obviously for the company, that's value. And then, just for genuinely, it is waste. And so that's where, you'll see that the machines can do 4 to 5 times what a worker can do, but a worker will certainly get to that bone and get that meat off properly.
Get more quantity.
It's a much better quality cut. And that's why we've seen a hesitation from plants to go automated.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So what about you've been working at that facility for over 30 years. Can you talk to us about what kind of changes have you seen over the course of your career? Which, I think one of the first things that comes to mind is obviously they must have been doing child labor over there, because you don't look a day over 40. So I don't know how you've been working there for 34 years. But so what are some of the changes that you've seen, from when you started to today?
Ooh. Changes for us going to work, for cutting. That's what you're asking. The changes for the cutting for the labor.
Yeah. Changes as far as what is different about your job, or maybe it's like pretty similar. I don't know. I would assume that it's changed over 30 years, but maybe it's actually pretty similar.
No, it's pretty similar. The same thing we've been doing on the line, the same thing we've been doing for the 34 years I've been there.
Wow. So
same thing, nothing changed on that.
That's pretty amazing. I think that a lot of folks think of poultry plant work as something that is really difficult to do, like physically, as 30 years. It seems like, I think the common perception of that is something that that like Amazon work, it's something that's going to chew folks up and spit them out. What do you attribute your ability to work in this industry for so long to?
Well, it was hard labor. It's hard work at Wayne when you, especially on the line, and you had to deal with knives and scissors or the bone particles, because then you're talking about your hands getting swollen or getting something. Then, or you're talking about the knives and scissors. You can get cut. Sometimes you get cut easily. Sometimes the bones just cut you, because sometimes the broken legs or broken bones in the breast, and that's cut you. So it's hard physical labor when it comes to poultry plant. It's hard.
Right. Well, so you've been. I'm sorry.
Just repetitive. You have the repetitive motion all the time. So that's when you have a lot of people with a lot of hand problems or shoulder problems.
Right. So y'all have been unionized since you started working there. What has it been like? What are some of the things that you, as a local president, as somebody who's working on the shop floor, somebody who's been a steward over the course of your career, what are some of the things that y'all do as a union to fight for yourselves and your coworkers there at Wayne Farms in Decatur?
Just for representation.
Yeah, representation. We are there for representing. If the company do something wrong to them, or management do something wrong to them, or write them up for the wrong thing, that's where the union come in at, because they talk to them wrong. Anything in that nature, anything can be wrong besides what's in the contract. That's what the union is good for.
Through their bargaining process, they were able to secure some language that gives essentially, as you know, right to work state and wine garden rights. Okay, so the companies are often not going to call you a union steward if you don't ask for it, right? So under federal law, you've got to ask for your steward. And at Decatur and Wayne Farms, Mona's been out there for so long and been representing so many workers for this amount of time. There's really not a discipline or anything in that plant that moves that doesn't go through Mona or one of Mona's stewards if she's off. And so, for me, I think what's been amazing to watch and just kind of watch from afar is, I would probably say Mona represents 10 to 20 workers a day, maybe, if not more.
Sometimes more.
Every day.
Wow.
Right. And so those situations are everything ranging from, power bill issues or attendance issues to mental health issues to disciplines to, you name it, and Mona's in there basically half of her workday, probably, if not more, just representing employees, just from point A to point Z. She also handles their orientation, right? So she's the first face they see coming in. And she's very straight with them, especially the young people coming in. And, for us, just like I said, just being able to participate with her and watch her for these years, it's pretty incredible, really. It's a 600-700 worker facility, and nothing happens without Mona being in it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yep, they automatically call union stewards in on our job. When anybody being disciplined or anything, they automatically call union stewards in. They don't have to ask for them. I'm automatically in there.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you were talking to me yesterday about how you're you're trying to bring up some stewards behind you, and they're still a little kind of scared of management and scared of the boss kind of stuff, and you were talking to me about how you just got to stand up to them and tell them what's what, and tell them well, you got this in the contract, and make them respect you, kind of thing. Can you talk to us about how you got to be in a place where you, as a working person, feel comfortable standing up to management when they're not following the contract, when they're not doing right by their employees, by their workers, because a lot of folks, that's something in a union environment, in a non-union environment, like folks are just kind of conditioned to roll over when they're and be scared of the boss.
Yeah. Me personally, I just ain't never been scared of nobody. I just ain't never been scared of nobody, because I'm gonna just say whatever. But you have to gain your respect when it comes to management, and sometimes they'll try to go around me, and they'll do some things that they don't think I know. They'll try to sweep under the rug. But when I pick up on it and I find out, I go in there and we have it out. We'll have it out now.
There you go.
They'll try to pick up some things. Yeah, well, I do have some shop stewards. They don't like just going in there dealing with management at all. They just shop steward. But to me, on day shift, I have four shop stewards. I have one vice secretary, and the other two is shop stewards. And they don't just go in the office at all. Only time the secretary go in, basically when I'm not there. If I'm on vacation, if I'm not there, that's when she going. But 95% of the time, I'm in the office with everybody.
You just can't beat Mona.
Yeah. It sounds like it. I wouldn't want to mess with Mona, that's for sure. Y'all just ratified a new contract. Oh, I'm sorry, Josh.
No, go ahead. I told you when we spoke who the boss was in this situation, for sure.
Yeah, right. So y'all just ratified a new contract about a month ago. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, we do ratify the they had us on incentive to pay. That was $2 an hour incentive for attendance. The incentive mean the attendance, you have to work all scheduled hours. And if you're 1 minute late, they take the incentive. They take the $2 back off the incentive. So my case, if I was making $15 an hour, with the incentive, they put me at $17 an hour. So, but that's only time work. If you have to leave, go to the doctor, or go to court, or go do anything, go to daycare, pick up the children, you lose that incentive. So you only get the incentive only if you're working all the 40 scheduled working hours. That's the only time you get that.
It was also a concern, Jacob, because it's something we raised during the pandemic, is that it's an attendance bonus. It's weekly. And so 40 hours, you work your schedule is 40 hours, no issues, you get the extra $2 an hour. But if you have a worker that is not feeling well or that may be sick, they need that $80 a week. And so they're more likely to come in and get that bonus and just sort of sweep their sickness under the rug with no other option. And so it really was, it's been a fight that this local has taken up for the last few years. But go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing is that y'all were able to get rid of that in the new contract, right?
Yes. We made it. It was a hard bargain that we had to come up. Then COVID played a big part in that. because they can't keep the workers, didn't have enough workers. So with the COVID, then with the union, went in and bargained with them to try to put the incentive on the hourly wages. And we got that turned over. So the $2 incentive went to the hourly wages, then plus $1.50 more. So that put it on $3.50 onto your regular hours, onto your $15 or $16 or whatever you was making on with that. So thanks with the union and with the COVID playing a part because they couldn't keep workers.
Sure.
And we had to keep workers. We told them they had to come up with more money. What can we do? They ask me all the time, Mona, what can we do to help keep some people here? Help do this, give them some more money. Give us some more work.
That's pretty simple.
I mean, it's pretty simple. That's it. That's it. And so, Jacob, we're talking and to be clear, just for it was a inter-contract increase. And so again, we've had sort of some disputes throughout COVID, and we've been really working to the company's credit to improve labor relations and to again, as Mona mentions, the pandemic really was a turning point, I think, for so many workers, and her local's no different. So we really started to try to improve those relations. And so what we saw was through this memorandum into the contract, nearly a 25% flat wage increase overnight. And so workers went from around $15.50 or so with an attendance incentive that was difficult at times to achieve to a flat $19 an hour. And so it's not the end goal, but I think for poultry workers in the South, the idea that we'd come to $19, $20 an hour this soon is a true testament to them really turning up their heat and their power in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, talking about going from $15.50 base rate to $19 an hour, that's on the order of like a 20% raise. That's pretty good.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's not something I would complain about. That's for sure. So, Josh, as a staff rep, your job is every day to go in and support folks like at Wayne Farms in Decatur, fighting the boss. What are some of the most common things that you see in the industry and at Wayne Farms, as far as violations of the contract, bosses not treating workers right? And how are you, in concert with folks like Mona and shop stewards, how are you able to resolve those issues?
Yeah, I think Mona alluded to it. I think a lot of the issues at hand has been getting workers to really take agency over their local and understand that they are the union, that there is no the union, that they are the only ones that can really move the company, that it doesn't matter what staff rep you have or how good I am with my words. If I don't have a feisty shop floor, I don't have much, right? And really trying to explain that they are the engine that makes this thing go, that we work for them and that they know a whole lot more than we do about this industry. And really sort of starting there and really getting workers to take agency over their union, and then now seeing results of it. And I think now that, our locals and our local working officers can see that as we grow and as we participate and as we push back on the boss, we see amazing things happen. And so, it's not just staff shortages. It's not just inflation that's driving these wages. The boss is nervous. The boss is more nervous than the boss has ever been. And, I would say for workers that are listening out there, I've never been more excited to wake up every day. I've never had so much influence or leverage or ability to help our locals move. The company's never been more willing to listen. And so now's the time to move. We have a particular time and leverage points that we need to be organizing and we need to be making demands. And something I will also note, and Mona can speak to this as well. We ratified the agreement 4 weeks ago ish. And we've signed up over 55 union members, and Wayne Farms has hired over 60 plus employees over the last few weeks, right? So they're flooding in the front door. And so for the companies that are wondering why you can't find workers, it's a wage issue you have, as Mona said. And as you increase wages, workers will come. And we're not satisfied at $19 an hour. It's still barely getting over the poverty line. We want to get to a place where workers have the ability to go on vacation when they'd like, and God forbid, be able to go to the beach once or twice every couple of years. And so you still can't do that on $35,000, $40,000 a year. So they're still forced to work a lot of extra hours, and we've got a lot of work to do. But,
Right.
It's the particular time. And so I don't have to do much. That's the beauty of it. I'm not supposed to do much. I'm just the messenger. And so workers have really been making my job easy, and companies are taking notice.
Yeah. Mona, what would you say to folks out there that are, that are kind of dissatisfied with their work and maybe thinking about forming a union, but they have got this idea from society that you got to be a good little worker, you can't stand up for yourself, unions are bad. What would you say to folks out there that are considering unionizing but are kind of scared about it?
Oh, I tell them that you can't be scared if you want to work. And I would tell anyone, if you want a union, try to get one. That's the best thing that you can have, because that's your right. You have a right to speak, and you have a right to voice your opinion. If you unionize, and I think that's the best thing that anybody could do. But you just can't be afraid to go in there and talk and tell management where they wrong at. If they wrong about something, you have to tell them what they wrong at. And you have to argue with them, because at some point they think they're not going to do anything. They'll say, we ain't going to do it. We ain't going to do it. Okay, you just file your paper. That's what grievances are for. And you put those papers on, you put enough papers on, they'll get right with you.
Right. Mona, Josh, thanks so much for y'all's time. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Okay, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We've been talking to Mona Darby. She is president of RWDSU Local 451, representing workers at Wayne Farms in Decatur, and Josh Brewer. He is a staff rep for RWDSU in the Mid-South Council. Love highlighting local unions, what they're able to win for workers. A base pay rate increase of 20%, that's pretty good. That's beating inflation, which very, very few people are able to do right now. So lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff there. We're going to take a break really quick. Don't go anywhere. On the other side of the break, we're going to be talking about what happened last week in Southern labor and talking to Scott Heric of Unionly. We'll be right back. Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBW is the right choice.
Energy Alabama is a locally operated and membership-based nonprofit organization focused on advancing Alabama's clean energy future through education and advocacy. Many people in charge of infrastructure and building decisions simply don't know how viable clean and renewable energy is, and to that end, Energy Alabama has provided instruction to thousands of adults and tens of thousands of K-12 students across the state, and they are working hard to build careers in clean energy and help everyday Alabamians save money on their utility bills. Learn more about their work and how you can join at energyalabama.org.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys of Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs are proud to represent working people in Alabama and across the Southeast. They have over 100 years of experience representing injured workers in workers' compensation, personal injury, and disability claims. Let their attorneys help you when you get injured on the job. You can find them at www.mtandj.com or 855-617-9333. Let Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs help you when you get injured on the job. Again, the website is www.mtandj.com or the phone number 855-617-9333. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services from other law firms. Attention union members, podcasters, members of membership organizations. The future is here, and you need to be prepared for it by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or other organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. You'll also be able to use a union-friendly organization. We use Unionly here at the Valley Labor Report, and they have been very great to us. Their fees are lower than Patreon's, actually. They set up a great store. It's all extremely user-friendly, easy to use. So, folks, if this is something that your organization or you as an individual are needing, if you're needing a way to regularly collect dues from members or supporters of your organization, if you want to set up an online store, then you should start preparing for the future by calling today 206-595-8631. Again, that phone number is 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io. That website is unionly.io.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136, out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.
Support for this program also comes.
Workers, good news to you, I'll tell how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. You are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. If you missed the first 30 minutes of the program, you missed a good interview with President of RWDSU Local 451 at Wayne Farms in Decatur, shop floor poultry worker Mona Darby, and RWDSU staff representative Josh Brewer about poultry work, about how they are able to fight the boss, how they are able to fight for fairness in the workplace, how they were able to win a 20% raise for their workers. Wow. That's some... Yeah, Mona's... Yeah, for sure. Mona's great. We really do need to dig into that child labor stuff, because her being in there for 34 years, I mean, she, like I said, she doesn't look a day over 40. So I don't know what was going on with that. We gotta look into that for sure. But our next guest is we're talking to Scott Heric from Unionly. Unionly is a union-focused company created specifically to support organized labor through payment management. They run dues payments, online stores, events, fundraisers, all sorts of stuff for unions all over the country, and they handle our store and our recurring donations as well. And they're also union represented. Their employees are union represented. Scott is the co-founder and CEO, and he is our next guest here to talk about Unionly. Scott, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. So, I just gave the lowdown about what y'all do. Why is that a service that you reckon and the other folks that you started this company believe is something that is important to offer unions and other membership-based organizations?
Yeah, so about 6 years ago, I started the concept, and I was working at my prior company, and I was approached by the owner and founder of Unions America, Union Active, and the first thing that kind of put us onto it was the amount of fraud that happens in fundraising with GoFundMe in the union space, where just how many people are, hawking the news for line of duty deaths or just members that have been injured to basically create fundraisers that are fraudulent, which I thought was insane. So we wanted to do something about that. And then as we got into it, realized there's really nothing built for organized labor. Sure, there's PayPal, there's Venmo, there's different mechanisms that are wildly overcomplicated for businesses, but not actually for organized labor. And so as I kind of got to learn about the whole industry more about 6 years ago, worked on the concept for about 4 years, pitched it to my prior company. They didn't really like that because it wasn't their idea. Then March of 2020, obviously the world ended, and we got to work April 20th of 2020. So overall, it's basically just a simple way to give organized labor and unions control of all of their financial records and revenue, and just really control of money.
It makes a lot of sense. I think an under talked about something that maybe doesn't get enough attention is dues checkoff, and whether or not that's really kind of the best way to get money from members. Funding unions and organizations through membership donations, through dues payments and things like that. I think that is obviously the best way to fund an organization, because you're not going to be dependent on donors. You're not going to be dependent on outside groups that are going to tell you what to do, or they'll be able to revoke your funding. It's going to be coming from you. So I think dues payments are very good, but I think that dues checkoff, that really does put a lot of that puts some amount of power in the hands of the employer for the funding of your operation, as opposed to something like Unionly, where you're getting it directly from the member, and it's easy for the member to do because there's an automatic payment option kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've, while it's been unfortunate to hear the scenarios a lot of our clients have been in, where, the employer has cut off payroll deduction as the main union busting tactic, and they come to us and they're in a panic, understandably so. But fortunately, we've been able to help them get set up with an entire replacement system in about 24 hours, right? Which has allowed them to stay together. And then as part of those conversations I've had with our clients, they said, oh, hey, we're working on the new contract. And as part of that, they go back to payroll deduction. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? And I think the prevailing logic has just been, that's what you do, right? Because it's easier. I actually think from the company's side as well, it's actually costing them a ton. And I think if they were to openly be willing to create a new system, as opposed to just saying, hey, we should stop doing this to break the union, which, is BS. They should say, hey, there should be a system that gives out them actually control and actually saves the company money, which can go back to the people and help them out too. So really on both sides, it seems like a process that needs to stop, but no one has said, hey, this is really stupid and inefficient, right? I think that's a big change, at least in my opinion. If something's wrong or if something's bad, I'm not going to sit around and say, all right, yep, that's just the way it's done, which is not how I operate. And especially with the control it gives, to me, it's like, hey, if that's the biggest weapon they're going to use against you, why would you hand it back to them?
Right. Yeah, I think for me, that is definitely the most persuasive argument. Whether or not it's the cheapest or most efficient. I believe you that it is, but I think that even if it wasn't, the argument that we are going to be placing the funding of our unions in the boss's hands just because that's what we've always done. I think that's something that folks should definitely kind of think about. And there are lots of other payment processing sites that do this, and some other unions have, and some unions have gone to various organizations, various payment processing sites to handle online dues payments, virtual dues payments. What is the advantage of Unionly to these other sites?
We are specifically built for organized labor and focused on this one group, right? And we put the entire process and network together into one platform. I mean, normally you need about 10 or 15 pieces to set everything up. So one, it takes about 10 minutes to set up. Two, we have a way to do it that's completely free. And three, it can be customized and is built specifically for organized labor.
Yep. And I will vouch for that as far as the responsiveness and the quickness of setting stuff up. I mean, anytime that I send y'all a tasker for, oh, hey, can you add this to my store, or can you add this section to the store, or can you, when you set up the store, I was really amazed at like how quick the turnaround on all of this stuff was, and how responsive y'all are to information requests and things like that. Y'all are definitely a really easy company to work with. I think that there's a certain like mission orientedness to your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. 4 on that list is we care. I care, and that's easy to say, right? Talk is cheap though. So I welcome the opportunity to back it up. And I think that's really, how we've kind of been able to establish a base of success is earning trust, right? I mean, in life, if you don't have trust, what else do you have, So to me, it's really care, right? Is a big defining factor as well. So, yeah.
And y'all have partnered with some other union like digital companies, like so. Our website was built, TVLR.fm, by unionsamerica.com. They are represented by the Teamsters, and it's a union web designing company. And y'all partner with them so that you can fully integrate your store and your dues payments into your website that is also union built.
Yes, sir. It's a great point. We're part of the Unions America and Union Active family. Within the website, there's a Union Active website and management system, and then we as Unionly are the payments element of it. So you're right. It does all tie hand in hand. There's a mobile app for communications, the website. I mean, really, with the way that technology is currently and is going, things are already accelerating at such a rapid rate. They're going to accelerate it at a rate that is more rapid than anyone has ever seen by a long shot. So the days of saying, oh, one day we'll have to change, that was like 2 years ago. There's the prevailing logic of, oh, well, maybe one day is no longer valid, right? So in order to kind of stay with the times and stay current, and it also makes things so easy to bring together, right? As opposed in the past where it used to be extremely expensive, time consuming. It's a lot easier now, and it makes life better for everybody. So.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's been great though to work with the different organizations we've had the privilege of working with, and really it's once I kind of met Timothy as the owner of Unions Active and Unions America, and I heard about this opportunity to basically help the working class of America and the working folks of America. I said, yeah, absolutely, that sounds great to me. And actually, it's kind of funny, for pitching that idea to my last company, which they didn't like it to the tune of so much that I was actually part of a group that got laid off. So it's actually kind of fitting.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, hats off to them. Good job. Yeah. I actually can't hear his feed. Oh yeah, Jacob, I can't hear his feed actually.
Oh, Adam, I heard you, but then I lost you. But yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, he was just saying that that's meeting a need, and the last thing that we'll say on this is that in addition to y'all are definitely super focused on organized labor, but you do have you are willing to work with other like labor friendly organizations like us. We're not a union per se. All of us are union members, and we're like cooperatively run and things like this. But you're willing to work with other kind of labor friendly organizations if they have this need too, right?
That's a fact. That's a fact. Good people only.
Good
Well, I met
people
you as you're doing a great job, and you're serving a great cause. And yeah, no, absolutely. So we welcome the opportunity to work with good people and help support missions that support people. So it's people helping people.
How many folks are y'all? How many different unions are y'all working with right now?
Getting close to 400 actually.
Wow.
So of varying sizes, ranging from I think 45 members to over 60,000. So it's really built for anybody.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Scott, I really appreciate your time. You can learn more at unionly.io. That is unionly.io. And you can learn more there, and they can get you set up by the beginning of next week. So, Scott, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it. You have a good one. Thanks, everybody.
You too. All right.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
All right, folks. Yeah, we've been talking to Scott Heric. He is the co-founder and CEO of Unionly, unionly.io. So yeah, make sure I really think that that's something that unions should consider for sure. Is getting off of dues checkoff, because I think that it's something that I think that you definitely. I think that there's merit to that argument. So like everybody on the radio knows, we also stream on Facebook and YouTube. You can chat with us on Facebook and YouTube. You can chat with us on Facebook and YouTube, and we see that in real time. And we got a chat on the YouTube chat asking a question. Eve said, "Hi all, I have an honest question. The hub's husband is part of a union for Cal State employees, but the union has let them down time and time again. What can he do?" And so Adam replied in the comment section that our initial thoughts are going to be connecting with union members with similar concerns to pressure and change the leadership. Pressure/change the leadership and lead a movement from the bottom up of rank and file workers to address the concerns. Because like we say, this is kind of like a catchphrase of mine almost at this point, that unions are human institutions, right? Unions are made up of workers. Workers are humans. So workers are not perfect, right? And so we can see, and we do not at all say that it's impossible, that there are unions that have flaws, that there are unions that have an overly bureaucratic or separated leadership, that there are unions that have kind of strayed a little bit from their mission of representing their employees. I don't doubt that for a second, and we know of examples of that. So this is a real problem that exists. Right? There are unions that are not responsive enough to the needs of their members. Okay? So this is a problem. And the question is, how do we do something about it? And like Adam said in the chat, and his response was echoed by some other union members in the chat. She said that they tried, the union never even turned up to the table. He has no idea what else to do or who they can complain to. He has called numerous times. They don't even pick up the phone. Like, this sounds like an issue, right? That the leadership is not even picking up the phone. Like, that's obviously an issue. Jeb kind of echoed. Jeb is an iron worker locally. He's been on the show. They're a sponsor of the program. And, he said basically the same thing. And she kind of got a little bit testy. She said that this is the frustrating part. It was the question to get real answers, and all I get is platitude. And respectfully, Eve, I would say that what we're saying and what Jeb is saying is not a platitude, because unions, Jeb said that the union is the workers, and so because the union is the workers, he can make a change even if he's not in leadership. He can get with his coworkers who have concerns and make those concerns known, right? Because even where you have a responsive leadership, it doesn't mean anything if they don't have the rank and file workers to back them up. So if you have an unresponsive leadership, then you can get a rank and file movement to make them responsive or to replace them if they don't become responsive. And we've seen multiple stories of this happening, like Adam mentioned, the Chicago Teachers Union. The Chicago Teachers Union had a very similar thing happen at where they had a leadership that was not responsive to the needs of the members, and so there were rank and file Chicago teachers who got together in their schools and started talking together, started organizing together without the help of the leadership to build power themselves. I mean, Adam, can you talk a little bit? You know a little bit more about the Chicago teachers. So if she's looking for like a specific guide for how to do that, I think there's a lot of reporting that's been done and analysis that's been done on the Chicago teachers, and so that's like one of the first places to look is what did they do, right?
That's the first thing that came to my mind, especially with it being public sector in this specific example as well. So what they did in Chicago is, as you mentioned, rank and file folks came together. They formed a caucus called the Caucus of Rank and File Educators, CORE. And what they were doing, on the one hand, was more or less doing the work the union was supposed to be doing. So they were actually having meetings. They were collecting concerns from members. They were doing community organizing and building the coalitions with parents and students and neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so all the things that basically they saw their union was not doing were things that that the caucus started pursuing and doing themselves. Like, hey, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it ourselves. We'll prove how it's supposed to be done. And the other piece of it was organizing to actually change the leadership and run for union offices from the lowest level down to all the way up to president. And ultimately, they did succeed in taking the presidency and a majority on the executive board. And so it's sort of you got to have multiple pieces to it. That's the big picture view. The smaller picture view in terms of like, hey, I'm an individual and like, where's my next step going to be? If you've already feel like you've exhausted all the resources and steps within your union, you've talked to all the people you're supposed to talk to, you've placed all the phone calls you're supposed to place, and you've documented that. And that's something that sometimes folks forget to do, but do document. Not just when you're talking with your boss, but if you're in a situation like this where you feel like your union's letting you down, you should definitely document, take notes on when those calls were made and when they weren't answered, and you can bring that evidence forward. And if you can't resolve it internally with the union by going all the way to the top, if need be, the last resort would be to take it to the National Labor Relations Board, because unions do have a legal obligation to represent their members. And they can be charged with a failure to represent. I believe it's a DFR charge. Mm-hmm. And so they're not very common, but in extreme circumstances it happens. Right. And so those are a couple of thoughts I have. I really hate to hear that's the experience. Yeah. One thing I will say is, number one, don't let that color the experience of the labor movement overall, because there are locals out there that are not so great. There are locals that are. There are leaders that are not so great, and there are leaders that are. But your bad experience doesn't necessarily mean that that's how all unions are or how all leaders are in the union movement. And I would also say, don't just drop your membership, because as soon as you drop your membership, well, then obviously you have even less input into the process, and you're going to probably just be dismissed even more so. As long as you're an active member, you still have certain rights to representation and to services that you should get. If you pay dues, you should get what you pay your dues for. So those are some of my thoughts. I would say just document where you've gone through the process and kind of worked your way up the ladder. But it's very likely it's a cultural issue within the union, where maybe there's been a long practice of sort of being disconnected from the rank and file. Right. I don't know about this union. I'm not going to speak on what kind of model they follow or the merit of their leaders. But
that's not a good report for sure.
Absolutely
they're not even answering the phones. That's really not a good report. But like Adam said, and this is and we'll move forward from after this. But like Adam said, it's important to recognize that individual stories of union malfeasance or union inaction are not representative of the labor movement as a whole, and they're not representative of the value that coming together with your sisters and brothers on the job and organizing a union, it does not, that is not representative of the value that has, because we can look at what they do for people. And my uncle is a really good example of this, and I didn't know this until recently, but my uncle was a chief steward of the Teamsters at UPS in Huntsville, and he got people their job back when they were unjustly fired. He did a lot of work for the union, and when it came his turn to be represented for the union, for his the leadership to kind of fight for him, he felt like they did not, and he was fired, and the union was not able to get him reinstated, and so he ended up doing a lawsuit on his own, and he won. Which is amazing, and so he's on disability now because he was injured on the job, and he's got a really good retirement coming from UPS, and so he will tell you how the union, how his leadership screwed him over, right? He'll tell you that, and he's not going to mince words, but he will also tell you that the only reason he's got a good retirement is because he was a Teamster. He'll also tell you that the reason that he retired in 2002 making $35, $40 an hour is because he was a Teamster, right? So he doesn't lose sight. And we were talking about the Amazon campaign, and he was like, I just can't understand it. I just can't understand why they wouldn't unionize. And this is a guy who has been personally screwed over by unresponsive leadership.
Yeah.
And that is the attitude. And Eve, I totally understand that this does leave a bad taste in your mouth, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and this behavior does undermine unions, but it's important to contextualize.
And I've had those kind of conversations when I've been out recruiting members. Yep. This is a right to work state. You actually have to recruit members to be part of the union, and I've had those conversations where folks did have a bad experience in another industry or in another local, and it really can leave a bad taste in people's mouth. And so that's why I think it's important that we all do the best that we can and understand how it goes beyond just that one worker, that one member, that one local. It does reflect upon the movement overall. And, that's something that weighs heavy on me, thinking about my past experiences. What could I have done better to represent members? What were the cases that I lost that those things still weigh on me. And I can tell you every person I know who's worked, who's either been elected to union office or worked as a union staffer, it does weigh very heavy because it should. It should. And if it doesn't, then that's a problem.
Be in this line of work.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the question.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you,
That was a good question. That was a good discussion. We're going to go to a break really quick. And on the other side of this break, we are going to play a clip from our conversation with Tim James. He is a candidate for governor. So yeah, that's going to be fun. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we will be right back. Energy Alabama supports consumers and is a leader in advocating for them. They have been able to successfully fight off utility rate increases in the state, reduce fees for electric vehicles, increase electric vehicle infrastructure spending, and they secured a $100 million refund by Alabama Power after the utility overcharged customers for fuel. To learn more about their work advocating for customers and to join the fight, go to energyalabama.org.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBEW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
The attorneys of Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs are proud to represent working people in Alabama and across the Southeast. They have over 100 years of experience representing injured workers in workers' compensation, personal injury, and disability claims. Let their attorneys help you when you get injured on the job. You can find them at www.mtandj.com or 855-617-9333. Let Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs help you when you get injured on the job. Again, the website is www.mtandj.com or the phone number 855-617-9333. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services from other law firms. North Alabama DSA is looking for folks to work for a better North Alabama. They prioritize mutual aid, municipal activism, and union solidarity. Contact them on social media or dsanorthalabama@gmail for more information.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Hometown Action is a proud sponsor of the Valley Labor Report, and we're here to help keep you in the loop on the assault on your right to protest, picket, and peaceably assemble in Alabama. The anti-protest bill is back this year, and it's as bad as ever. There is huge interest in building worker power and increasing unionization in Alabama that has corporations scared. Don't let their influence on our state legislators become another tool to arrest striking workers and union supporters. This racist bill is especially problematic for black organizers and unnecessarily gives law enforcement broad discretion to define even small peaceful gatherings as a riot. Tell your Alabama legislators to say no to House Bill 2. We've set up an easy way for you to do that. You can go to hmtn.link/HB2 where you'll find more information and an email template you can use right from your smartphone. That link is hmtn.link/HB2. You'll also find more info on social media at Hometown Action.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. And, man, it's been a good show today. We've been talking about how unions are not necessarily perfect, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't join one. We've talked about how we've talked to local poultry workers about how being in a union has helped them. We've talked to Scott Heric from Unionly about how his company can help your union or union-friendly organization. We've had a good show today. If you missed any part of that, if you're listening to us on the radio and you're like, hey, man, that sounds good. That sounds interesting. There's a poultry union in Decatur. I want to learn more about that. But, man, I'm really bummed. I didn't hear that on the radio. Man, I guess that's lost to history. You're wrong. It's not lost to history. We are online. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Valley Labor Report, and you can find that there. We stream the broadcast live, and we upload clips throughout the week. We also upload it as a podcast. So wherever you consume your media, we're there for you. So next up, I spoke to Tim James yesterday. He is a candidate for governor, and we spoke for about an hour yesterday. I'm going to play for you 12 minutes of that conversation, and you'll be able to hear the rest of it if you subscribe to us online. Subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube feed, follow us there, and you'll be able to find the rest of the conversation. But Adam, let's go ahead and play that first 12 minutes.
Sure thing. And I just want to say that I could not be part of that conversation. I was at work, and I'm interested to hear what we have coming down the pike. So this will be a surprise to me as well. All right. Mr. Tim James coming right up.
Tim James is our guest this week. He is running for governor. He is an entrepreneur and a business leader. Those are a dime a dozen, seems like, today. He is the son of former Governor Fob James. Tim, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Thanks for talking to me.
Jacob, good Friday. Good Friday. And happy Easter. And happy Passover weekend on this holiest of holy weekends.
Yes, sir.
Good
yes,
good to be on the show.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to have you. We was talking before we started recording that I'm going to be going to my granddaddy's church on Sunday for the first time in a couple years, and I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since he's a preacher. Actually, been a while since I've heard him preach, so I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
So, we're just going to jump right into it. And I also told you before the show that the coal miners' strike in Alabama has been at the top of our radar. Working folks in Alabama have really been at the center of surging conversation about a renewal of organized labor in the United States. And one of the focal points has been those 1,000 coal miners in Brookwood that are on strike against private equity-owned Warrior Met Coal. When politicians are not simply ignoring the issue like Governor Kay Ivey or reading Warrior Met press releases at Senate hearings like Tommy Tuberville, they're outright restricting their right to speak and assemble like a Robert Bentley-appointed Tuscaloosa County judge has done during the entirety of the strike. What are you going to be doing for these coal miners in Brookwood, whether you're elected or not?
Well, number one, I can tell you, when I'm elected, these people going back to work. I think, isn't the holding company BlackRock?
Yes, sir. That's right.
So we're really talking about BlackRock, the biggest.
They hold the largest share of Warrior Met. They bought, along with some other D.C. and New York and Australia private equity firms in 2015 when the management took Jim Walters Energy into bankruptcy. Right. Those private equity firms bought them out and retained the same board of directors and CEOs, gave them a raise, while the coal miners took a $6 an hour pay cut, while the coal miners lost their pensions, while the coal miners lost significant sums of their health care, and they aren't getting anything from anybody in Alabama as far as the political class is concerned.
Well, it's worse than that. They're making record profits because of the price of coal. You got 1,000 Alabama workers. Government cannot get in the middle of a conflict, and can't tell anybody what to do. But I can tell you this: I will use my influence. I will not allow state resources, and I understand they're sending troopers up there to bring out-of-staters through the line, and that will not happen. The only way I would ever use troopers is if there was real violence, and there is no violence. And so this is a bullying tactic. Basically, what you got here, Jacob, is you got the governor of Alabama doing the bidding for the big business boys. And they all support her. They're giving her just buku of money. And my heart goes with working class people. And I knew this was a con. I knew that because I've read the data on it. when I heard that one of the demands of the corporate side was that if you have 4 misses, and that includes legitimate sickness, if you get sick and you miss a day, that counts towards a limit of 4. And at that point, you get fired, no matter if all of them were legitimate. I never heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I learned that, I knew full well this is a bullying tactic. They're trying to destroy them, trying to break them down. They're bringing out-of-state workers in through the line, helping them go through the line. And I can tell you, this is unacceptable. And as governor, I will step into the discussion. You can't make them, but I tell you one thing: Alabama will not allow its resources, its law enforcement, or anything else to take advantage of Alabama working citizens, let alone coal miners or anybody else.
Right. So have you been on the picket line with them yet?
No, I didn't even know the brevity of this issue, really, to be honest, until a few weeks ago myself. I sat down with some of the guys and they began to explain to me and what was going on. And that this is where I stand on it.
Yeah, well, that's I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that you've been in conversation with them, and I'm sure that they'd welcome you on the picket line.
Jacob, let me tell you something. I may go to the picket line, but you're not going to get me to go 5,000 feet into the earth in one of those elevators,
right,
into the bottom to in a coal mine. I don't, I can do a lot of things, but that I don't think I can do. You realize guys that do that are some kind of tough, fearless guys. It's amazing. I've always loved coal miners. My dad loved them, just loved the personalities, and just family is generational. And to lose that generational work, they all act alike. They're big. They look like linebackers. Is an absolute shame, and we got to use the influence that we can to make this problem go away. And I won't sit idly by and let corporate America, BlackRock, any of the rest of them unfairly penalize Alabama citizens. And we'll talk about it publicly, and we'll see what they're made of. See how much pressure those boys can take.
There you go. That sounds good to me. One of the things that intersects with the strike is the state of freedom of speech in this country. Like I said, they have been limited for the entire. I mean, they've been on strike for over a year now, and they've been limited the whole time how many people they could have on the picket line. First it was 11, then it was 5, then it was 6. For a couple months, they were banned totally outright. They could not have picket lines. Now, I think by his good graces, that Tuscaloosa County judge has allowed 2 people on the picket line at one time. How do you is that something that the state should be doing? Should be telling people when and where and how they can and can't protest the boss in their state?
And I was aware of that, but I never really took the time or haven't had the time to read the reasoning that the judge gave. What did he say? What was his purpose, or what was his reason for this limitation?
The reasoning was because of quote unquote union violence. And of course, on a picket line, you're going to have some skirmishes, right? You're going to have some consternation between the scabs who are, bending over for the company, basically. You're going to have some issues there. But the vast majority of the instances cited have been where the scabs have run into the striking miners, and the striking miners turn around and kick the car, or turn around and, bust the window after they've been hit. So it seems totally out of proportion to what has happened.
It does. And a limitation like that is absurd on its face. And, as governor, I'm just telling you, I'll get in the middle of it and probably resolve it in an afternoon, because I suspect BlackRock and the corporate side, they don't, whether they want to really get crossed up with the governor in a state where their coal mines are inspected by the state of Alabama and tough questions can be asked. So, I want fairness. I'm not looking to abuse anybody, but I will not allow Alabama citizens to be abused by Wall Street corporate groups. They have every right in the world to buy any asset they want, operate it, but I expect fairness in Alabama.
Some lawmakers in Alabama have tried to further restrict the ability of working folks to speak freely, to protest the state, protest their boss, by trying to pass so-called anti-riot bills that they would, and it didn't pass in the last session. And these bills would, obviously, I think they'd be used against folks who are on the picket line. They would enable people to, without being convicted, be held for 24 hours before they're let go, before they can post bail, and they can be convicted according to numerous lawyers that a properly motivated DA could convict somebody of quote unquote rioting under the new definition even if they had not damaged any property or hurt a hair on a single person's head. That seems to me to be again just a vast overreach. How have you felt about the so-called anti-riot bills that have been been trying to pass across the country and in this state?
What you're describing would be a First Amendment violation. I think a lot of that stemmed from some of the craziness. Some of the Black Lives Matter overkill, some of the junk out west and northwest, but there is a right to assemble peacefully, and if the idea that you could criminalize that is so unconstitutional on its face, I just can't believe that would really get real legs.
So now, you wouldn't support the anti-riot bills that have been put forward?
No, I don't support anything. I believe in the right to assemble. If you break the law, if you start tearing things up, burning buildings down, painting monuments because you don't like the monument, just tearing up, abusing public property, that's against the law. I'm going to lock you up, put you in jail. But if you are assembling on a picket line or anything else, you have that right. You have that constitutional right. Labor has every right to assemble, every right to strike or not strike, and to be bullied or threatened by some zealous district attorney is unacceptable.
Them when you're in the office, but we'll see what happens. But the rest of the interview, unfortunately, we're going to release that on next Sunday, so a week from tomorrow we're going to release the rest of that. After that, it really devolved into conversations about the culture war, which he says is his number one priority. He says the culture war is his number one priority, which is fascinating to me. And one of his big things that he likes to repeat is that we have all hell has broken loose since we took prayers out of school. And so I asked him, so if you think about this logically, if all hell has broken loose since we took prayers out of schools, which I have a problem with that premise because I prayed in school. We had a fellowship of Christian athletes. We met before school started, and
the meetings at the flagpole, the whole 9 yards.
There
was a joke.
We had teachers that would give us lessons at the fellowship of Christian athletes that we would come to. We had outside speakers. We gave lessons at the fellowship of Christian athletes. There was no prohibition at all on people praying or people practicing their religious convictions. The prohibition was on forcing other people to do it or forcing people to listen to you do it, right? And I think, whatever.
Which, by the way, that still happens plenty in Alabama too.
That still happens plenty. But so he says that we took prayer out of schools, we've gone to hell in a handbasket. And so I asked him a pretty simple question, right? Okay, so if you think that we are worse now because we don't have prayer in schools, if we are a more morally bankrupt country now, then you think we were a better country before when we had Jim Crow and when we had slavery. And so I asked him, when you look at America today, do you believe that we are a morally worse country than we were back then? When we had Jim Crow, when we had slavery, but we had prayers in schools. And I could never get him to answer that, which is a just fascinating thing that you can't answer that it is better. I mean, even if, let's even stipulate that you believe that homosexuality is a sin or that it's bad or whatever. Even if you believe that, we should be able to say that it is a society is morally better when gay folks are not harassed for being gay and we don't have slavery, rather than we've got slavery and gay folks are oppressed, right? I mean, I think that should be a pretty easy thing, and I couldn't get him to say that. So.
Well, I think with those types of folks, they're okay with the harassment. I mean, they would either deny that the harassment takes place, despite all the statistics that we have that proves very clearly that there are plenty of hate crimes that still take place against LGBT folks, or they would, quite frankly, just defend it and think it's a good thing. But yeah, Tim James, that's good that he supports the coal miners in words. Maybe he's staking out a position that Kay Ivey hasn't taken, and so who knows? Maybe this puts it back on the radar for the gubernatorial campaign.
Yeah,
but
that would be great.
It is possible. Let me just be clear. It is very possible to love coal miners and all working class people
and gay folks
and gay
trans
people
folks.
and all kinds of people.
Yeah.
It is. I can reconcile that. I don't know why some people can't, but that's the power of ideology.
Yep. So we're gonna wrap up here on the radio with Last Week in Southern Labor. Last Week in Southern Labor is a segment that we do every week where we go over what happened last week in the South in the labor movement. We get this information from Jonah Furman's newsletter, Who Gets the Bird? You can read it at whogetsthebird.substack.com, where he goes over what happened everywhere, all over the United States in the labor movement. We just take out the important parts, which is what happened in the South, right? Screw the Yankees. I don't care about them. Of course, that's a joke. I love my Yankee brothers and sisters. Blah, 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 blah. In new organizing, we had new union filings are up 57% year over year per the NLRB. Something approaching 10% of those are from Starbucks alone, which is awesome. Speaking of Starbucks, 479 Starbucks workers at 17 stores filed for elections with Workers United, including in Denton, Texas, and Boone, North Carolina. 62 staffers at good government nonprofit Common Cause in D.C. are unionizing with the Washington-Baltimore News Guild. 60 commercial building cleaners for Hamhead in D.C. are organizing with Laborers Local 572. 3 flight simulator techs for CAE in Midland City, Alabama, are joining the Machinists. 3 sprinkler fitters for Amtech in Lexington, Kentucky, are joining UA Local 669. SPFPA continues to unionize canine handlers with 40 more joining in D.C. this week. 15 security guards at an air traffic control center in Fort Worth, Texas, are joining Federal Contract Guards of America, and 8 security guards at an office building in D.C. are joining SPFPA. In election wins and losses, we had 156 workers for Refresco in Fort Worth, Texas, remain with the Teamsters Local 997 after beating a decertification vote 84-49. In strikes and bargaining, Justin Miller at the Texas Observer has finally written the deep dive piece that the 10-month Exxon lockout of 600 steelworkers in Beaumont, Texas deserves. Check it out. Several big grocery strikes did not happen last week, with a major deal announced in East Texas, where 17,000 Kroger workers with UFCW Local 455 were once again on the precipice of a strike for the third or fourth time during the pandemic. 300 nurses and hospital workers with the D.C. Nurses Association held a one-day strike against Howard University Hospital in D.C. The Parcast Union, which is a part of the Writers Guild of America East, has been in negotiations with Spotify for a year and a half and is frustrated over pay, diversity, and intellectual property provisions, saying they are ready to strike. Vice ran a piece about the BNSF rail carrier's egregious high-vis attendance policy that has been driving longtime railroaders with BMWE, that's a union, and Smart TD, another union, out of the industry, and which courts have more or less said the unions can't strike over without massive state reprisal. Imagine that in this country. But the free speech war is about whether or not you can post on Twitter. Meanwhile, the government is telling railroad workers that they can't strike because their bosses aren't letting them off more than one day a month. Screw you. I mean, God, screw you. Screw you if you think the free speech fight in America is on Twitter. Sorry, it's so frustrating. Senate cafeteria workers with Unite Here Local 23 in D.C. rallied last week. In political fights, NLRB General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo is at it again, dropping some extremely consequential memos. First, that captive audience meetings where an employer forces workers to listen to propaganda against the union or corners workers on a job to convince them to vote no are against the law. Second, that it's time to reinstate the Silk Doctrine. We'll be doing a deep dive in overtime on that, by which a union is only not recognized when there is some good faith reason to doubt that it has majority support among workers, not just when the boss would like to drag the union into a weeks or months-long campaign. The second memo actually contains several important recommendations, though it's not totally clear when these things might go into effect. They have to be taken up by the board itself for them to go into effect. So we'll see. Also, the NLRB has finally ruled on the Memphis 7, which is 7 Starbucks workers fired for organizing at a Memphis location, which provoked national protests, but what felt like a sluggish response from the board in a campaign that's moving at a speed unheard of for the 21st century NLRB. The board says the firings were illegal, but the question remains if the board is willing to stop the tactic from spreading, as it has throughout the company, with activists fired in Buffalo, North Carolina, Arizona, and elsewhere. And boom, that's going to be it for us on the radio. If you want to, call us in overtime. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. You can go to our website, become a supporter of the program at tvlr.fm. If you want to continue listening to the program, you can find us online. And stay tuned for overtime, where Sam Cedar from the Majority Report is talking to us about Air America, where we answer the question, are Starbucks workers parasites? That's a crazy question. That is a crazy question. And we explained that Glenn Greenwald doesn't know anything about unions, and we're going to be talking about more. So, folks, stay tuned. Find us online, The Valley Labor Report. All power to the workers. All right, folks, we are off the radio. We're off the radio now. Got rid of those folks on the radio. So yeah, like I said, we've got a really cool overtime coming up for you. Really excited about that. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for staying with us. We really appreciate our online audience. And like I said at the beginning of the show, like, listeners are, I mean, I'm not making this up. Listeners are they make up more of our funding comes from listeners than anywhere else. So if you think that what we're doing is cool, you like what you hear, you think that it's helpful, consider sending us a recurring donation on our website, tvlr.fm. You can do that through Unionly, who we talked to today, Scott Heric with Unionly. We've got a great overtime lined up for you. We've got Sam Cedar. He's going to be talking to us about Air America. And then we're going to be talking about Glenn Greenwald. We're going to be talking about whether or not Starbucks workers are parasites, which is just fascinating. Going to do a deep dive into Joy Silk. Going to be great. So, just stay tuned really quick. We're going to get a drink of water, take a quick break, and then we will be right back with Sam Cedar.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we are in overtime. We are in overtime now, and that's what we do after we get off of the radio. We get rid of those pesky folks on the radio. And our guest for overtime, really excited about this, is Sam Cedar. Have we got Sam Cedar online now, Adam?
Yes, we do.
Sam, welcome.
Can you hear me? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Sam is the host of the Majority Report. I think probably most everybody knows who Sam Cedar is. And he has COVID right now. How are you feeling right now, Sam?
I'm feeling better than I have in about a week, to be honest with you. So I'm on the mend. I first got symptoms, I guess a week ago, yesterday. And when I woke up last Saturday morning, I was testing and I tested negative. I got a PCR that day and still negative. Felt crappy through the night, coached the baseball team Sunday morning, fortunately outside, and I was at first base coach for most of that time, so it wasn't terribly close to the kids, fortunately. And a day later on Monday, I tested positive. So, but it's been pretty rough. But I'm feeling much better these days. Thanks.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And that's it's definitely a bummer that I know that you've been super careful with trying not to catch the COVID. It's honestly crazy that I haven't yet, being around so many folks. I guess I do get to work from home most of the time, so that's probably been a big part of it. But yeah, I'm really glad that you're feeling better. Glad you were feeling well enough to join us today. And
Thanks
what I reached out to you for to talk about is I'm interested in talking to you about Air America. It was a liberal talk radio kind of thing in the early 2000s, and one of the things that you talk about a lot when you talk about Air America is the mismanagement of it by the people at the executive level. So can you just explain for the people who don't know? There are a lot of people who probably don't even know what Air America is. Can you talk to people about what Air America was, and talk to us about why it ended up failing?
In the early aughts, there was a growing awareness of the power of right-wing radio throughout the country, and I mean that. I think there would have been a growing awareness of it for years. I mean, Rush Limbaugh, I think, launched in '88, I think it was, and really made his name during the Clinton years, and had become, in many respects, one of the most sort of influential voices in the Republican Party. I don't think it was acknowledged as such at the time, but I think those who sort of were paying attention understood that and weren't sort of trying to convince themselves of otherwise. And we certainly can see that 10, 15, 20 years later. But, and so there was a lot of talk about doing this. In fact, in the run up to the Iraq War, I was in show business. I think I was directing a show with Gary Busey and acting in sitcoms, and but even I was very aware of just sort of the absence of any type of pushback in the run up to the Iraq War. And one night, a friend of mine who had a really well known show on a community radio station in New Jersey on WFMU, a guy named Tom Sharpling, invited me over to take over 2 hours of his show on a Tuesday night and do what was the first Majority Report. And John Benjamin, who voices the intro for the Majority Report, now has had a lot of success, completely unassociated with that, came over and did the intro live. I invited Janine Garofalo, who I ended up going to, working with on Air America, to be a guest. And that was in the run up to the Iraq War. I think it was in February of 2003. So there was a real awareness. I mean, and like I say, I was in show business, and if I was aware of the absence of any type of like media that was promoting any perspective other than sort of like the centrist or right wing perspective on mass media, it wasn't. That sense was in the air. And then in 2004, maybe it was late 2003, I got a call from Janine Garofalo, who said that she'd been asked to join this left-wing liberal talk radio network that was forming called Air America. Al Franken was asked to be on it and was basically the flagship show at noon. Mark Maron was asked to be on it. He did the morning show. Rachel Maddow was on it at first as a producer with Liz Winstead and Chuck D. They had a show. And Janine and I did a show in the evening, and also Randy Rhodes, who had been an actual talk radio, AM talk radio host. I think she was really the only one who was really like a true radio professional and knew what they were doing. She did like the 3 to 6 slot Eastern. And then Mike Malloy followed us at night. And I raised that because I know you want to talk about how, if there is an opportunity to do radio again, and he was on a network at the time called IE America, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, but it was owned by the UAW. And it was only on a couple of stations, I think. And I think there may be, a model associated with that can be replicated. But so Air America launched. It was it got a massive amount of publicity because there was nothing like it that had ever been. It was the first radio network that was trying to launch within 30 years. And sadly, the guy who had launched it was a bit of a, there are some people, I want to be careful about this. There's some people who said that he had psychological issues. There's some people who just said he was just, a bit of a hustler, as it were. But he never had the money or the capitalization he claimed he did. And within several months, all the bills came due and it was clear he didn't have the money. Then there was another sort of interim ownership team that came in and a new CEO. And this happened over the course of 5 years. We had, I think, 5 different ownerships and maybe 6 different CEOs during that time, including a period of time in Chapter 11 where the station sort of operated on its own, which was oddly, I think, the most successful period of time that took place. And I think there's also maybe sort of like a hint at a model there as well. But it was, in terms of numbers, in terms of ratings, pretty successful. I know that at least our ratings in New York and LA for the evening show that we had, we were beating Laura Ingraham and Mark Levin, because at one point we were over 2 different time slots, I think, and into 7 to 10. Then we moved to 6 to 9. And we were beating some of the biggest names in radio in New York. Some areas we would do better than others. Excuse me, that COVID's still lingering a little bit. And I know, like, Franken, at a time where there was no streaming technology, was getting up to like 30 or 40,000 people streaming him simultaneously. And this is before YouTube, before streaming him on real audio.
Wow.
Excuse me. And so that's the, that's basically what Air America was.
That's really amazing. The, having 30 to 40,000 people streaming him, not even counting the people who are listening.
And that's in any given 5 minutes.
Wow.
Any given 5 minutes. It was measured by a 5-minute increments. At one point, I was the editor-in-chief of the website. And so I had access to this information. And for that time, it was astonishing.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the, why do you feel like then, the narrative basically of liberal talk radio is that, it's not going to work. There's no way that it can work. You can't finance this model. It just doesn't work. People don't want to pay for liberal talk radio. People don't want to listen to it, but the ratings were there. And, so why did it, what was the reason then? And I think you pointed to it. It was management, right?
I mean, there was no radio at that time. Was essentially, there was three different types of talk radio: sports talk radio, Spanish talk radio, and not political talk radio, but right-wing talk radio. And each of those genres have a different ad base. There was no one in the radio business who understood where our value lay. And it laid in two places, and I can give you two stories that illustrate this. Very early in Air America's history, maybe it was 2004, maybe it was 2005. There was a strike by I'm pretty sure it was the Rockettes at Rockefeller Center, and they were going nowhere. It was a tough strike. They couldn't get management to sit down at the table. They ran like 2 ads on Air America, and the impact of those ads was so great that management immediately contacted the union that represented the Rockettes and said, "We will sit down with you and give you this concession and that concession before we even sit down, under the one condition that you pull the ads." And for those of us who were sort of like, who understood this dynamic, we were like, we have just found the power of this network, which is we are talking to the activist base. Like, we have the ability to move the needle. This is the one place you can go if you want to reach these people. There may not be the same numbers that has been built because, we were just starting out that you might get with right-wing talk radio. But we are talking to people who have a deep, deep connection to this. And we should be going to every single union in the country and saying, like, we have found your people. If you need to reach them, this is how you reach them. And that completely made no sense to the sales force and the management, because none of this meant anything to them. They had never sold an ad to a union. They were never talking to this type of audience. And so they were unable to monetize the value of what we were putting out there in terms of the numbers. And on top of which, they were also, radio people who, with all due respect to radio people, they're a lot more savvy now about this, but at the time they were completely moronic when it came to the value, the idea of having an audience that was willing to pay for things like podcasts. At one point, I mentioned I was the editor-in-chief of the website, and sometime around 2007, I want to say, Tom Hartman came onto the program and onto the network, and he had made a deal, or I couldn't remember exactly what the details of it, but the long and short of it was, there was a website selling his podcasts for, I can't remember what the number was, but they were generating thousands of dollars a month. And for that time, understand, there's no Patreon, this is all some individual who is smart with tech, who's figured out how to create this type of thing. There was no advertising associated with it. And I think the number was something like generating over $100,000 a year. Wow. And which at that time was a lot of money for us. I mean, and I would go to management and say, you just need to send this guy a letter and say, stop and desist, or even better, because you can't seem to create the apparatus, tell them, like, you're no longer selling our stuff without cost. We're going to split it with you, whatever the split would be. But management was allergic to this. And just did not think they wanted to be in that business, which was absurd. And so those were the two sort of biggest illustrations of the failure of management at different times to understand where the value lay.
Do you feel like that's because this is? I feel like this is something that we talk about on the show a lot. Is that, the people who do the work know how to do the work, and basically, if the boss will get out of the way, we can get it done. Do you feel like that? And the retort to some criticisms of CEO pay is that they're just worth that much. Basically, Elon Musk is worth billions of dollars. Like, he's just that smart. He's that valuable to the company. Jeff Bezos is that valuable to the company. Things like that. I mean, do you feel like that is the mismanagement of Air America? I mean, do you feel like that is illustrative of, broader trends and broader problems of organizing industries in such a top-down way, in a way where the people who are actually doing the work have the least amount of say?
Well, I'm not sure if I can draw how broad of a conclusion I can draw from this one experience at Air America. But I can tell you this, that one, we had in this country incredibly successful industries and companies through the 50s and the 60s where you did not have this type of pay disparity. I mean, there's just it's not, we only need to look to our own history to know that the idea that there is a CEO that is worth 100 times more to a company than any individual worker, otherwise the company's not going to be successful. We know that's not true, because we simply have to look in our own history to see that we can have industries that grow, exponentially without that type of dynamic. One thing that I do that I like, to the extent that I feel like I can generalize from Air America, that I saw, and it is one of the few corporate settings that I have ever worked in, is that the executives were working on behalf of themselves. They were not working on behalf of Air America. They were working on behalf of themselves. And sometimes that aligned with the interests of Air America, but far more often than not, those interests did not align. And so they would do things that would enrich themselves. And a perfect example of this is, so the shows had political people on them. Like, they were either really interested in politics or activists, or had come from sort of like the political world. And at one point early on, my producer, who has gone on to work for Bernie Sanders and as a senior policy advisor, is now working for the Labor Department, worked for Harry Reid at one point, approached me and said, "Hey, I've built this relationship with this company called Blue Digital." This was prior to the Obama years. It was they were a nascent sort of like demographic targeting internet agency. And I've developed some relationships there, and they want to offer their services to help us find our audience. And he said, I know that we're planning to do a big mailer because that's what radio did. They would send mailers in the mail. And this way we can make sure that our yield, who we're sending the email, the mailer to, is more likely to be an audience member of Air America. And we went to the management at the time and said, look, we have the ability, if you're going to send out 500,000 mailers and your average, yield of hitting a potential Air America listener would be, let's say 10%, or let's say 20%. Well, these guys can probably triple that yield, where 60% or 75% or 80% or 90% of the people who are going to be looking at that mailer are going to be potential Air America listeners, because they have data about what these people read, what's magazine subscriptions they get. They have voter file data, on and on and on and on. And it would have made that mailer so much more powerful, even to the point where you could say to these people, if you get an Arbitron listing, keep us in mind, because they have an activist mentality and they want to help the cause. And the radio guy was like, no, that's all right. Because he wanted to go to his vendor who he had worked with for years before. And he knew that after Air America, he would work with again, who had the ability to maybe help him out for his next job, because radio people are journeymen. And so they bagged it. We could have gotten those services for free. They put out that mailer at the cost of $500,000, and our ratings were actually lower the following quarter. It did less than nothing. And, the reason why these guys would operate the way they did is because they were looking to maintain their relationships in an industry in which they knew they would be looking to these people for a job down the road or for a favor. And I could literally walk through every one of those radio executives who did that very same thing, and it accomplished exactly what they wanted, which was, I have no idea. I've taken this job. I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't figure out how to monetize it. I don't know this world. I voted for Mitt Romney. I may have given money to Mitt Romney with some of these people. And this is, that's the type of sort of mentality that they would have. And they were out for themselves. And that notion of executives now in America operating their businesses as a cottage industry for themselves. On the private level, you see that. On a public level, you see it in the form of the way that they get compensated through stock options. All of these changes that took place in the 80s, where you could buybacks were legal, where stock compensation gets taxed at a different rate than the compensation for you to actually work. These created incentives for the executives to do things that were not necessarily in the best interest of the company long term, certainly not in the best interest of the community long term, certainly not in the best interest of the workers long term, and like I say, not even in the best interest of the company long term, but was in their best interest with a 2 to 5 year horizon when their stock interests are going to value. Because look, if it's basically like a side bet. It's a cottage industry that they're operating that is, a barnacle on the side of this ship that is a company and a community and a workers, however you want to look at that. But that barnacle is worth, worth millions of dollars to them personally. and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just misaligned incentives.
Right. So if Air America was a worker co-op, it would have succeeded. Is the message?
Well, right? I mean, I in all honesty, that we were in bankruptcy, and each show was simply operating in the way that it knew best. That is when we had the lowest burn rate and the highest relative revenue rate.
Wow.
And I don't know how you would necessarily operate that as a workers' co-op without, where you would get that initial financing from, to be honest with you, because it takes a tremendous amount of money up front.
Right.
Or at least pretending you have a tremendous amount of money for an extended period of time. And, but there are mechanisms, if the government was to provide low-cost loans there are mechanisms.
Right.
And I don't know, there would be issues like there would be in any enterprise, but I am convinced that there is a way to do that where it is much more decentralized, and the workers who are working there have a lot more power. And a co-op, it seems to me
that they would be more even financially successful because they know their audience, they know what their audience wants, they know the people that can reach their audience. I think that that's a pretty powerful rebuttal to the idea that that management always knows best, and that they're so super smart and important. And
management had no idea. In fact, the industry itself didn't have any idea. The biggest problems that the ownerships had is they came in and they listened only to that management consultant class. Because they had no ideas on their own, and so they simply went to the person with the nicest watch, and and that was basically it.
Sounds like a lot of our politicians, frankly.
Yeah.
Some of them were our politicians, or hope to be, frankly. But it was a real shame in that instance, and I think there's an opportunity. I don't know if I think there is value in enterprises like unions, who have this type of money, maybe engaging in something like this, and small cooperatives that can do this, certainly with online sort of entities. But I think at the end of the day, radio, right-wing talk radio, is heavily subsidized by the right. It just is. And I don't know radio as a national industry is hugely viable in and of itself, because the return on investment for those radio stations is pretty low at this point. The amount of expenditure that you have, and it's got a lot more competition from the internet. But we need something like this. We, regardless of whether you're talking about, the center to the left, liberal politics, or, more specifically left-wing politics, simply needs to be able to compete in this area.
And that's why, that I've had people kind of push back at me, why are you getting on the radio? And I know that we're a little over 20 minutes, so feel free to let us know that you've got to go, and I want to be respectful of your time. Don't want to keep you very very.
My
much
coughing
longer,
fit will determine it.
Right. Well, but there are folks that are like, why are you paying so much money to be on the radio? Like it's a dying audience. It's you should just do a podcast. And obviously you being on the radio versus you being on YouTube now is different, because it was like 20 years ago that you were on the radio. But you would talk about having authors and skyrocketing their book to the New York Times bestseller list by doing an interview with them, and you just don't have the same. You just don't, even if you're a successful podcast, you just or like YouTube show or Twitch stream, you just don't reach the same amount of people, and it's not as geographically centralized, because y'all have like 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and you get like tens of thousands of people watching every single day, but that's tens of thousands of people across the United States and Canada and the UK, whereas like my local the local talk radio station that we're on, one of them, the morning show host, he has probably 10,000 people listening to him within a 50 square mile area.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
And you're just going to reach people who are not looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's the value of radio, is you're going to reach people who are not looking for you. They're going to stumble on you. They're going to have been listening to a different show on that station, or they're just going to be checking the dial because they don't want to listen to the ad on the other station. Mm-hmm. And you're going to reach people who you simply cannot reach online, because even with YouTube, there will be right wingers who come across our channel, but it's because they're looking to hate watch. And there is there's some version of this which we try and do by getting into other people's algorithm, so that if you're a fan of this right winger or that right winger, that we pop up because we have engaged them enough that we can break through their algorithm. And that's the way that we can find other people. But there's nothing like radio to reach, and particularly the working class, because radio still remains the one medium that has the most presence in the most homes and lives of Americans. And it is the cheapest medium in which to listen. And so you're going to, you're reaching people who are, they've got their radio on at the job site when they're building, or when they're, working with a group of people, or maybe they're at, a store and working retail, and you're just going to reach people that you can't reach by other means. And it's not the most, it's not the way to get, rich, but it is a great way to further your political agenda.
And that's something that we struggle with as far as trying to build an online audience, because we don't want to be driven by the clicks necessarily, but we do want to bring people to the channel so that they see the other stuff. And I'm thinking about, there was one time a while back that Jimmy Dore attacked the Chicago Teachers Union, and I was like, okay, this is a good chance for me to talk about Jimmy Dore. And so we did, and Glenn Greenwald talked about unions last week, and so we're going to be talking about that here in a little bit. He thinks that Glenn Greenwald thinks that wokeness is the reason. The quote from his article in his Substack is just, it's really fascinating because it's so stupid. The excessive engagement in politics is the number one obstacle to a robust American labor movement. What? And so we're going to be talking about that in a little bit, but we talked, we talked about Jimmy Dore, and, a lot of our videos get 50 to 100 views or something, the clips do, and we talked about Jimmy Dore like once, and that clip got 2,000 views, and I'm like,
right,
why are you watching this drivel? Like, why?
I mean, look.
Also, that brought those, we saw an increase on the other views on our
Yep.
channel after we got those views from that clip. So, how do you like balance that kind of stuff?
I mean, I certainly am aware of that dynamic, and I got very lucky insofar as that I had come off a radio and I had an email list, and so I had an audience that existed, and I didn't have to, and I got to a certain critical mass early, and I mean, we have the same challenge, right now, particularly in this era of our politics, on our channel. And, we still put out videos, and, we cut up our videos, as you know, and I think probably you do it in the same way. I mean, I still sort of base the show as if it was a radio show. And then, so our videos, we have a disadvantage right there in terms of the YouTube world, as it were, because we don't create discrete videos that live in and of themselves. I don't say oh, here's this topic, I'm going to say this, and this, and run the video, and then do that, and then the video ends. And then I'm going to move on to the next video. I don't do that. That's what most YouTube shows do. We do essentially a free-ranging show and then clip it afterwards. And that is not, that's not terribly effective for YouTube. In terms of content, I just continue to just do what I have always done prior to the existence of YouTube, which is I do show, topics that I find interesting, and I don't really care that much as to, how much traction they get. Certainly we target certain right wingers and certain, people who are just, we think are putting out garbage, both for, fun, and I enjoy it and this and that, but also with an eye of like I said, if we can get into their algorithms and pick up a couple of viewers who, we can sort of show them a different perspective on this stuff, we'll do it. So all I would do is I would just make sure that you're conscious of not going for material that, because it's going to get clicks. I think you got to just, continue to do what you think is important stuff. And when there is, something that allows you, Glenn Greenwald writes that unions shouldn't be involved in politics. I don't know really what that means, but it gives you the opportunity to tell a story about how unions should be involved in politics. And, if using Greenwald as the peg for that, thing gets you more views than all well and good. But you just got to keep, just going to make sure that you're not falling into some type of trap where you're just doing this, exclusively for the clicks. And like I say, I'm lucky insofar as our YouTube numbers can have, and we can still, we can still function and hang on, and some years are leaner than other years, and that's okay. I mean, for us, because we've hit a certain, we've got 5 or 6 employees, and like I say, some years are leaner than others, and for the most part, we haven't had to to, when we go through lean years, react to it in a way that cuts people out. And, part of the reason why I did that Peacock stuff for a year was just to sort of get a cushion for what I knew would be a couple of lean years, just because, sadly, people, at least a chunk of people from the center to the left, unless there's, a Donald Trump or George W. Bush type of figure, they go back to brunch,
Yeah.
essentially
So-
is the problem.
Yeah. Well, we have a caller on the line. I think he was wanting to talk to you. Adam, could you, if you've got just a couple more minutes?
Sure,
Sam,
sure.
Could you bring the caller in, Adam?
I will certainly do my best to do that.
Okay. Ben, if you're listening, I don't know if Adam's
we're not professionals,
Yeah,
like Sam's crew,
Right.
But I do believe we have the caller on the line.
Yeah, can you hear us, caller? Hello?
Well, that's live radio, folks.
Did we drop him?
No, the caller's still there. I'm not sure why it's not going through, but I'm
Did
Been
you,
there.
Bring... I thought I heard something just there.
that was the clean feed apparently that was still going through, but
Yeah, you can.
Let's try this now.
Oh, hey.
Oh, there you
there
go.
we are.
Jesus Christ.
Were you prepared
Well-
to get roasted? I didn't know that was coming. I'm sorry.
I was not prepared for that. It's I hate to ruin the joke, but that was Ronald Reagan, who is a caller into the Majority Report, who knows that I know nothing about the baby boomer generation except for what I've read, because I am not, in fact, a baby boomer. Baby boomers were born, I think the oldest baby boomer was born in 1964, I believe. Maybe it was 65, but I was born in 66, so I am Generation X. So I don't have an answer for that fake caller. I'm sorry you guys had to go through that.
Well, I got to figure out how to put the caller on the air.
There you go. It was a good
learning experience.
We have all learned something, and
Absolutely.
it's unbelievable what Ronald Reagan's family puts up with. That's all I can say.
Sam, I did want to say before you get out of here that I do remember listening to Air America radio as a 10th grader in Huntsville, Alabama, just desperate to find anything that wasn't George Bush and the war machine. Of course, I was disillusioned by the Iraq War, like many young people, and just searching for something. And so I do remember you and Randy Rhodes and Al Franken, and it was like y'all and Democracy Now! Was about the only media alternatives we had at the time. So I give you a lot of credit, and a lot of your comrades a lot of credit for helping to blaze the trail of a independent left media that we have today that is so much more robust than anything I could have imagined back when I was in high school. It's there's stuff out there for everybody, and I think that wouldn't have happened without Air America and those other experiments to get us down the road.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. I think it's really important. I would love to see more people, even people who start off with podcasts, take it to a local radio station for an hour once a week. It's obviously a lot more work, but I think that it's such a unique type of payoff and so unique to radio. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and good luck with it.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Sorry it took so long to work out. Appreciate it, guys.
Oh, no worries. We appreciate you going over.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye. Yeah, so that was Sam Cedar, and that was a lot of fun. Enjoyed that caller there at the end too. So I alluded to this during our conversation with Sam. And this is something I was going to do it a little bit later, but since we've got so many Majority Report listeners, hello everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining us. Since I've got so many of y'all listening, I'm going to bump this up because I think y'all are going to enjoy it. Glenn Greenwald thinks that the reason that that union membership is in decline is because unions are just too woke. That's his take, and that's what Batya Ungar Sargon argued in Glenn Greenwald's Substack to his approval, and his claim that the piece is quote unquote extensively researched, despite the fact that the majority of the claims come from an interview with a union member who ran for school board as a Republican, which is, whatever, that's fine. And an American Compass survey. American Compass is a conservative media or a conservative consulting firm that's ostensibly pro-union, but they don't want unions to be involved in politics, that purported to find, quote, that excessive engagement in politics is the number one obstacle to a robust labor movement. So let's go ahead and we can just go one by one on this. They quoted a lot of people in this about the value of unions and about what their union has done for them, and about how there was this one guy who is a Democrat who, it's funny that the only actual Democrat that they talk to in this piece is an example of what they say the unions do not do, right? So the only quote-unquote Democrat, the only left-type woke person that they talk to in this whole piece is a guy named Tanny, who is a Democrat, but who makes a lot of efforts to reach out to his Republican members and not alienate them and make sure that, they know that he's fighting for them just like he's fighting for the Democrat members or whatever. And so he's the only person that she talks to from this persuasion. And then she talks to some other people who talk about the value of unions generally. And then there's this one guy who's a Republican who ran for school board who said that his name is Jeff. He's a pipe fitter, and he says that unions are too woke. And he says this is a quote from the article, for example, in the pipe fitter trade, there's a tool called a nipple that connects different pieces of pipe. But as part of what Salovich sees as progressive pressures on leadership, the word nipple is now verboten. And if you're caught saying it, you'll get reprimanded by your boss. Which is insane. And she references nothing else to back this up other than the guy who said this. And so this is something that I'm like, there's no way this is true. And Dave Camper on Twitter, he found a pipe fitter contract, like a collective bargaining agreement that refers to nipples in the contract language, like how they're supposed to be used and things like this. And so this is the only anecdote that she has that's very easily disproven that nipple is a verboten word in the International Union of Pipe Fitters and Allied Trades. I mean, this is just such a silly thing to allege when you can just go and talk to another pipe fitter. There are thousands of these people Like, just talk to another one more, and they'll be able to tell you that this is nonsense. The other thing, so that was one thing that she pointed to. The other thing that she pointed to is, like I said, an American Compass survey that found that they purported to find, like through research and polling and things, that from the American Compass survey, quote unquote, excessive engagement in politics is the number one obstacle to a robust labor movement. This is the results of the survey that they were pointing to. They commissioned a survey. They got results. From the results that I'm about to tell you, they concluded that excessive engagement in politics is the number one obstacle to a robust labor movement. Let's go number one. By a 3-to-1 margin, potential union members say they would prefer a worker organization that focuses only on workplace issues to one that is also engaged in national political issues. Okay, so here we've got a worker's preference for a worker organization that focuses on engagement about workplace issues. Okay, so we have acknowledged, let's even stipulate this, that there are no issues with the polling, there's no issues with the way that the study was worded. Let's just stipulate all that. All we've got here is a preference for a way an organization ought to run. Not saying I will not be a part of an organization that runs in a slightly different way. Not anything like that. It's just, this is a preference. Okay, let's go to the second one. When asked how important various activities are for a worker organization to pursue, potential union members assigned half their weight to collective bargaining and providing training and benefits versus 3% to politics. So here we've got just another expression of preference, to which they said in their own, in this study, the research, the survey is saying that 3% of a union's time ought to be devoted to national political issues. Okay, so we're just lodging worker preferences. We're not talking about obstacles or anything like that. Let's go to number 3. Only 35% of potential union members not already in a union said they would vote for one, which is roughly equal to the 34% who are undecided and the 31% who said they would vote no. The top reason for voting no is union involvement in politics. By contrast, fear of retaliation is the reason least cited for voting no. So here is something that we could say that this is potentially an obstacle, right? Here we've got something that's actually potentially an obstacle, but the only obstacle is that the people who have already decided that they're going to vote no, only 31% of the population, the people in this 31% that we're looking at, they have already decided, I am voting no. I am voting no. That a plurality, not even necessarily a majority or a supermajority, but a plurality of the things that they're pointing to for a reason that they're going to vote no, this minority of workers, is that unions engage in politics. And you know, frankly, if there's like 10 to 15% of workers who just will not vote for an organization that devotes some amount of time to advocating for the issues that their members care about on a national stage, like, is that actually the number one obstacle that workers face in this country? That workers face to organizing their workplace in this country? That's just insane. That's insane. Like, getting those 10 to 15% of people to vote yes, that is simply not the most pressing issue for organized labor to address. It's simply not. It's simply not. Getting this minority of workers who are already predisposed to vote against a union, getting them on our side is simply not the top priority. If you're in a workplace and you're talking to one of these workers, I'm not saying to immediately write them off. If you're in a union and you represent one of these workers, I'm not saying that you shouldn't represent them well. You should do both of those things. You should talk to you should talk to them if you're organizing your workplace, and you should represent them well if you represent them in your workplace as a union steward or as an officer or as a staff representative, things like this. But getting those people to say to a random pollster that they're going to vote yes is simply not the top priority, the number one obstacle to getting more union members in this country. It's simply not. It's simply not in a country where we have, where the government is telling rail workers that they can't strike, where Starbucks is firing barista after barista after barista for organizing their workplace, where Amazon is getting away with flagrant violations of labor law during elections. That is simply where it's difficult to even get a union election, where people don't know where to start, where people think that unions are illegal in their state. I still have people today who come to me who say, I thought unions were illegal in Alabama. Getting people who hate unions to vote yes, who think that unions should never get involved in politics, is simply not the number one obstacle to winning union elections. It's simply not. And to suggest that it is absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, the thing that makes me suspect about this poll is that the top reason was in unions' involvement in politics, and the last reason cited was retaliation. And I think that just doesn't match up with the real world experiences. It certainly doesn't match up with my experiences trying to recruit people. Retaliation is going to be a much bigger fear for folks to getting involved in a union or to bring a union in than, the political candidates the union's donating to. And that's not to discount that that's a legitimate issue. You and I have talked about this on the show. We've talked with Hamilton Nolan on the show about national unions and how they have been overly loyal to the Democratic Party at the national level and often given these contributions with very little to show for it. I think those are all legitimate issues that we have to tackle. But the deck is stacked against bringing in a new union, and the deck is stacked against having a powerful union where it already exists through a series of broken laws, through a series of reactionary judges, through the sheer disparity in wealth and resources. I mean, when you have billionaires such as Jeff Bezos and the companies they own, they can blow millions of dollars in hiring union-busting attorneys and fighting union campaigns, and it's chump change to them. It's meaningless to them. Jeff can find that in his couch cushions.
Right.
So, I just don't see that as being a legitimate thing. It can be a problem, but the thing about the labor movement that is so valuable and promising is that we can cut across political divides and unite workers around issues of real material interest. And that's been my experience. Yes, I've had people tell me, no, I disagree with, the union backing Hillary Clinton, or I disagree with them being pro-choice. Those are common things to hear in Alabama. But I've also had people who are Republicans and Democrats and, folks independent of both of those, all united on the same page to make their lives better and their coworkers' lives better.
Right.
That's the potential of labor. So, I think you're getting too far astray from what the labor movement can actually do.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, the methodology for deciding this is absurd. It's just so silly. She quotes an article. She quotes a union officer in the article as well, who he gives what he believes is a big reason for unions having difficulty starting and winning elections And then she just goes on to give her own prescription when she obviously knows nothing about, like, you would think that the people, you would actually talk to the people who are organizing unions, workers who are trying to form unions to figure out what the biggest obstacle is. But no, she's just going to go to a right-wing think tank. David Rolfe, founding president of Seattle-based Local 775 of SEIU and author of The Fight for 15, The Right Wage for a Working America, explained, sort of like if you were running to become mayor, but before you were allowed to be the mayor, you had to first fight to establish that there ought be a mayor at all, and then once you establish that there should be a mayor, then you find that your opponent is the only one with access to the electorate for 8 hours a day, and that they've had a voter list for years, and you just get it 6 weeks before the election. And also they have unlimited resources. Like,
right.
How do you hear that? And then, well, obviously, the way that you hear that and then go on to say wokeness is the reason that unions have declining membership. Wokeness is the reason. The way that you hear that and you offer this different prescription is because you've got an agenda that you want to, you just want to bash the left. You want to bash unions, and you do that by ostensibly standing up for unions and bashing the left, but really what you're doing here is undermining unions.
It's really disappointing, because I remember some really good journalism coming from Glenn Greenwald years ago, helping to break the stories about NSA surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's disappointing to see him kind of just become a troll on the internet, and it seems like that's sort of his shtick now, is just fighting culture war stuff online. Maybe that's working for him. I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, that's, we in the labor movement don't have a whole lot to glean from that.
Yeah.
Our focus has to be meeting people where they are, and growing our coalition, growing our numbers. The hostile folks, there's always going to be hostile folks. If anything, our goal should be to get them from hostile to disengaged.
Right. Yeah, and I mean,
focus on those folks that are hungry for a union, are those folks who are on the fence, people that can be reached through real conversations and real relationships. And last thing, and I'll move on. Our dear friend Hayden Wright in the chat mentioned that. Guess what? You have to be involved in politics to some degree, as a union, because you are subject to politics. The folks who are writing the laws, the folks who are allied with your bosses, the judges, the police, the legislators, school board members, you name it. If you're totally disengaged from the electoral politics altogether, I think there's an arena in which you're not bringing the
power.
Right. And that's not to say that that's for everyone. I know, like IWW,
right?
I'm a proud member of IWW. They don't get involved in electoral politics, and I understand why, and I support why they don't do that. But I think it takes all types coming at it from different angles to be effective.
And if you really want your unions are the workers. So if workers are really actually, if this actually was the number one issue that potential union members, that union members themselves actually had with their unions, they could stop it. They could stop it because unions are the workers, and they elect by some mechanism or another the people who make these decisions about whether or not to support this or that candidate. And by the way, a lot of this is misinformation about union dues going to politics. The things, when you hear about a union donated $100,000, $1 million to this campaign or whatever, that doesn't come from union dues. That comes from a separate pot of money, a PAC that the union has set aside for voluntary contributions from union members to contribute to their PAC for explicitly. They are contributing to this pot of money explicitly for political purposes. They know that separate pot of money that they donate to, their union's PAC, they know that all that's going to is politics. And they donate to it voluntarily. It's not part of their contracts. It's not even in collective bargaining states. Nobody has to donate to their union PACs. You don't have to do that. It's all voluntary. So if you do that, you're going in with your eyes wide open. So people just they just don't understand. They just don't know, or they want to misrepresent it. But throw that tweet up from that fella about who he would help forming a union in his workplace, because this is actually the attitude that I've not ever met a union organizer that has an attitude that is different than that, which is, he said, I would organize. Let's see. Let's go to that. Let me pull that tweet back up. I would help my worst enemy form a union at their workplace. If you're my worst enemy and you're being mistreated at work, hit me up.
Right on.
And that's exactly right. Like, I do not know who Glenn Greenwald is talking about when we're talking about these people that are trying to, and Matt Iglesias talking about unions need to even represent folks who have traditional norms on gender or whatever.
They do.
Like, I don't know who they're talking about when they say these things. People do that. Union organizers do that. Union representatives do that. And if you don't think that they do, talk to some woke organizers. Right. Talk to some socialist union officers. Talk to communists who are representatives in their unions. And they will tell you that they will fight like hell for their conservative brothers and sisters. But you're not going to know that if you just want to write an article about how wokeness is bad.
Right.
So.
Do better, Glenn. Do
better, Glenn.
And stop pretending you know anything about the labor movement.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you do.
Yeah. There was another tweet that I didn't prep for graphics that said union organizers, something like union organizers don't need op-ed writers telling us how to organize our workplaces, and that's exactly my thoughts on that. So speaking of woke, Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. He owns homes in Manhattan, New York, North Salem, New York, and Vail, Colorado. So he's definitely out of state. I think we can agree on that. He has donated to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, and John Kerry, among many, many, many others. West Virginia's state treasurer has declined to continue using his investment firm BlackRock because of their quote-unquote woke and liberal politics, specifically around climate change. They're pushing companies to eliminate greenhouse emissions by 2050.
Or they were. I believe they've already started backtracking on that. The state of Texas wasn't a fan in the oil industry there. So my understanding is they were already waffling on that, but they damn sure wanted to put it out there to make it look like they were great stewards of the environment.
Well, so, I say all this to say that Adam, we would say Larry Fink is a person that Alabama Republican politicians would call an out-of-state liberal, right?
Yeah, I would say
I think
they would say that, sure.
Yeah, I think that's, a reasonable characterization of what they would say about this Larry Fink character. And that's really interesting because Larry Fink, as the CEO of BlackRock, which owns the largest share of Warrior Met Coal, which is the coal mining company that has refused for over a year to give the Brookwood coal miners a fair contract, Larry Fink would love nothing more than for Alabama politicians to help them in trying to break the strike. He would love it. He would love it if Alabama politicians issued injunctions, for example, that told Alabama coal miners when and where and how many and how loud they can or can't protest their boss. That they can't protest Warrior Met Coal, that they can only have 2 people on a picket line, that they can't have anybody on a picket line for months. He would love that. He'd love maybe a little bit less than that, but he'd certainly still love for them to at least not do anything to help the striking Alabama coal miners. And he would love if politicians who saw politicians issuing these injunctions, he would love it if they just didn't step in, while these other people are maybe doing a little bit more explicit union busting on behalf of Warrior Met and BlackRock. And what do you know? That is exactly what Alabama politicians are doing. Tommy Tuberville is reading Warrior Met press releases during Senate hearings. Richard Shelby is saying nothing. A Robert Bentley-appointed Tuscaloosa County judge has restricted the right of the miners to speak and assemble. Still, to this day, they can only have 2 people on a picket line at one time. But again, here we go. Free speech is the free speech war is on Twitter. And Kay Ivey, our governor, who is the chief executive of the state, has said absolutely nothing about the strike. She has made no comments on it, despite the miners making a trip all the way out to Montgomery to speak to her. And that's a drive from Brookwood, going to Montgomery to try to speak to your governor. And that was after months and months. I think they were 7 or 8 months on strike at that time. So anyway, it seems to me that Kay Ivey is basically doing exactly what liberal Larry Fink wants her to do, which is exactly what she told Breitbart she would not do last week. Adam, let's throw that graphic up. This is just amazing. She made a whole big hubbub about, I'm not going to let, I don't think I can do that. I'm not going to let out-of-state liberals tell me what to do. But she wasn't actually talking about standing up for working Alabamians against liberal bosses who want to cut their wages, standing up for working Alabamians against liberal New York private equity fund managers who are trying to destroy their union, who are trying to make their work unsafe, who are trying to bring in out-of-state scabs with taxpayer dollars through state trooper escorts. She's not talking about standing up for working Alabamians against liberals in that way. No, she was talking about standing up for the freedom of politicians to rile up resentment about queer Alabamians. That's her priority.
It's disgusting, really, the way they have demonized transgender people, especially this last legislative session, these last few weeks. It's the classic divide and conquer approach they are taking to the population of Alabama. It's a tried and true tactic. They've been doing it here in this state for many, many years. They've done it since we've been a state. For 200 years, they've been doing this divide and conquer and trying to get some of us to target others of us. It's really disgusting. And, I'm worried about our friends and neighbors who are LGBT and how this is going to affect them psychologically, physically, in terms of actual physical risk by the way these politicians are riling folks up about them. You've got Kay Ivey putting out these disgusting ads and Tim James putting out these disgusting ads. It's, it's gross and it's irresponsible. And it's, it just really, it's disturbing to me. They would use children as political footballs. Children. I mean, because they're talking about kids here. Kids, they want to deny medical care to kids. They want to deny medical care for these families and demonize them and target them. And for her to pose as some kind of rebel by doing so, that she's standing up to the powers that be. No. Right. You're doing it. You are the powers that be, and you're doing exactly what y'all have always done, which is try to divide the working class against itself to target more marginalized people.
Yeah.
So I'll stop now before I say things I'll regret.
Yeah, I mean, if out-of-state liberals want you to respect people who are different than you, not going to do that. But if out-of-state liberals want to steal money from your constituents, if out-of-state liberals want to put your constituents in danger, if out-of-state liberals want to destroy the organization that they have formed to fight for themselves on the job, you'll do exactly what these out-of-state liberals want you to do. That is the position of damn near every Alabama politician out there right now. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting. In better news, though, I don't know if we covered this on the show before, but a while back, the NLRB General Counsel expressed an interest in resurrecting the Joy Silk Doctrine. On Monday, she filed a brief. In a case called CMEX, requesting that the board use that case to reinstate the doctrine, which is really, really cool. She released a memo saying that, okay, I'm probably going to, this is something that I'm interested in doing, and now she's actually filed a brief in a case to the board, which the board has to decide whether or not they're going to bring this doctrine back. But she's making moves now. And unfortunately, a lot of folks in the audience are saying, what is Joy Silk? What is the Joy Silk Doctrine? But don't worry, that's what we're here for. If you want some more information than what we go into here, I'd recommend reading this article on Brandon Magner's Substack, Why Labor Law Needs Joy Silk Bargaining Orders. A lot of what we're going to be going over today is from that article. To explain Joy Silk, though, let's first circle back to the NLRA and understand one of the protections that it gives working people. Section 8A5 of the NLRA states that it is illegal to, quote, refuse to bargain collectively with the representatives of his employees that has been chosen by a majority of the workers. Further, from Brandon's article, no provision of the NLRA restricts an employer's bargaining obligation only to unions that have been certified through the NLRB's representation election process. Okay? So the NLRA says employers have to bargain with the bargaining representative of the workers' choosing. So if a majority of workers choose a bargaining representative, they choose to form a union, you have to recognize that. And the NLRA does not say that it can only be unions who are certified through the NLRB election process, okay? Does that make sense? Therefore, the board, the National Labor Relations Board, which is charged with the enforcement of the National Labor Relations Act, can order employers to bargain with a union that has not yet won an election, but proved their majority through other means, like authorization cards. So what we've got here is an obligation of the company to bargain with a union, but no clear means set out in the NLRA by which to prove that the union represents a majority of the employees. And that is where Joy Silk comes in. In the Joy Silk case, the National Labor Relations Board held that, from the article that Brandon Magner wrote, an employer would violate Section 8A5 and be ordered to bargain if it was presented with a union request for recognition and the employer did not possess a good faith doubt as to the union's majority status when it refused to recognize the union. Okay, so if a union comes forward with authorization cards saying, we have a majority, we request your recognition, and we request that you bargain with us. Joy Silk held that if the employer did not have a good faith reason to doubt the majority, that they would have to bargain. And so they were called Joy Silk bargaining orders when this happened. And so then the question arises, how do you determine if the doubt is good faith? The Joy Silk Doctrine put forward this test. 1, if there was some verbal, written, etc., explicit expression. If there was an explicit expression that they did not doubt the majority status. then they did not have a good faith doubt. Okay, so if you're able to find an email, or you have a phone log or a text message or a recorded conversation, and the employer says something to the effect of like, oh yeah, I just, like they just admit that, yeah, the union probably has a majority, but I just want this time to try to propagandize my workers. Okay, that's not a good faith doubt. You have to recognize and bargain with the union. Okay, the second test is if an employer refuses recognition and then commits unfair labor practices. Because under the Joy-Silk Doctrine, the committing of unfair labor practices over the course of an election is proof that you do not actually have a good faith doubt that they represented a majority, because you are willing to break the law to convince your workers to not join the union. Okay? Does that make sense? So we've got two tests for the good faith, for whether or not they have a good faith doubt. And that's it. You can refuse recognition and then commit ULPs. You don't have a good faith doubt. Or if you explicitly say you don't have a good faith doubt. So what the bosses are going to tell you, what the right-wing media are going to tell you, if they talk about this at all, they're going to say that this is simply card check. This is a backdoor means to get card check. But I just laid out the mechanism by which an employer can push an election if they really feel that the cards are suspect, or if they just like that formality. Don't break the law. Refuse recognition and don't break the law. And you will not be ordered to bargain with a union that has not won an election. That's all you got to do. Don't violate your workers' right to organize, and you will have a secret ballot election, if that's what you want. In effect, what this law did, as opposed to making card check rampant, is that it gave teeth to the board and gave bosses an actual incentive not to break the law. That's what it did. That's the actual effect that it had. It did not institute card check. And we can just look at the data for that. Brandon Magner said on Twitter that in the 20 years that Joy-Silk was the official national labor policy governing requests for recognition, NLRB certifications based on card majorities rather than secret ballot elections peaked at a whopping 3.6% in 1968. That means that is the most ever in 1 year. The most ever in 1 year NLRB certifications of unions that came from card check was in 1968 at 3.6%. That means even after 20 years of this being the official law of the land, at that point, 96.4% of certifications came through a secret ballot election. 96% of elections, of certifications of unions under the Joy-Silk Doctrine was in secret ballot elections. Okay, so that is what Joy-Silk did. Instead of being a backdoor to card check, it prevented the widespread use of ULPs. We can also see, if we look at the data, we can see an immediate and enormous rise following the elimination of Joy-Silk of ULPs. They increased several-fold, like 3 or 4 times more after the elimination of the Joy-Silk Doctrine. Employers began firing workers, began discriminating against pro-union workers, began lying to their workers, began threatening workers, all in violation of labor law. That's what actually happened. So doing this, having a Joy-Silk Doctrine, that prevented the widespread use of ULPs, and that paved the way for more secret ballot elections, not less. The last year that Joy-Silk was used, there were over 8,000 union elections in 1 year, compared to less than 1,000 in 2021. That's the actual record of what Joy-Silk did. It paved the way for more elections. It curbed employer violations of the law. And it made the way for more secret ballot elections, not card check. Brian Petruska in the Santa Clara Law Review said this, and he said it really well. Quote, those who would suggest that Joyce Silk will reduce the number of secret ballot elections have it exactly backwards. It was the abandonment of the Joyce Silk Doctrine and the adoption of Gazelle that has massively reduced secret ballot collective bargaining elections in this country. The board's experience with Joyce Silk, therefore, shows that Joyce Silk had no effect of limiting elections. To the contrary, Joyce Silk is necessary to provide a sufficient level of protection to make more numerous elections feasible. So there we go. That's Joyce Silk.
Any word on when we'll find out if the board will accept this?
They're going to evaluate it in the CMEX case that she filed that brief in, requesting that they reinstate the Joyce Silk Doctrine, and so it's probably going to be months before we see any of this instituted, but. There are movements, and there is, obviously there's worry about the Supreme Court striking it down, because the Supreme Court already struck down Joyce Silk in the 70s, I think. Struck down Joyce Silk in the 60s or the 70s. So there's worry that it would say no to this again, but let them do it.
Right. That's not a reason not to try.
Let them do it. Let them make the case that widespread use of unfair labor practices makes for more fair elections.
I think it is important that the General Counsel, the NLRB, is acknowledging that in recent history they have not been able to dissuade companies from breaking the law.
Right.
And I think it's well past time that they acknowledge that. I'm glad to see that. Hoping the board actually follows her lead on this. And I think we've said it before, but so far she appears to be one of the very few bright spots for labor to come out of the Biden administration.
Right. For sure.
It's been a pleasant surprise to see a much more aggressive NLRB, because after so many years of union busters being put on this board and straight up opponents of unions being in charge, it is nice to see someone with some sense and with a sense of history to try to get NLRB to do their job the way they were designed to do.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll stay tuned on how this pans out, but very promising.
Yeah.
And I think, I think unions across the country need to hear what she's saying and send her some test cases on this and in other areas as well, like the captive audience meetings. Send her the test cases and at least pursue it. And if it gets struck down by reactionary judges, so be it. We get back to the drawing board, but I think it's worth pursuing regardless.
Yeah. Let's do one more story before we wrap here, and let's talk about Starbucks. And we had two more stories, but we're just going to push them off to next week, I think, because we're already at 3 hours. So we're just going to do this one more, and then we're going to wrap up. So the day has arrived. We've got a group of workers unionizing at a Starbucks in downtown Birmingham, folks. Alabama is on the map.
Roll Tide.
Yeah, roll Tide. Last week, workers at the Starbucks location on 308 20th Street South in downtown Birmingham filed for an election. This is very exciting news, and I know that we're all looking forward to supporting them as they fight the boss. They filed for an election with a supermajority of the unit. So there was, there's some amount, there was like 70-80% of people had signed cards. So this is like really, really, really cool. They're going to win, and we're going to have a union Starbucks in Alabama. Just a quick reminder about how you can support workers organizing at Starbucks in Alabama and across the country from the workers themselves. First, don't boycott unless asked, you weirdos. I mean, I see a lot of this out there. And they think that like boycotting a company unsolicited is like the best thing that they can do for workers that are organizing there. And it's just simply not. So like, I don't know what else to say about that. I'm not telling you to go to Starbucks necessarily. Like, I'm not telling you to change your consumption habits. If you go to Starbucks, then continue going. And if you don't, then don't start. I don't care. And they don't care. But calling for a boycott absent the workers' leadership on this, it does not make sense. It is disrespectful to the workers, because it's like you're saying that I know best how to help you, when they know what a boycott is. They know how they can and can't be effective and helpful, and they'll call for one when they want one. And in fact, some stores have said we are on strike. Some of these stores across the country, some of these Starbucks locations, the workers have actually gone on strike for a couple of days, and they've said during this time, please do not go inside and order a coffee while we are on strike. And so you respect that, and respect the fact that everywhere else they're not calling for that. They're not calling for a nationwide boycott. So, like, don't be weird about it. At locations with a public union campaign, they have requested that you order your coffee / food or whatever with a name like union, yes, solidarity. You get the picture, right? Some sort of message like that. That's how they want to. That's what they want you to. That way they can say, union when they're calling out. They can say that on the clock. It's something fun, and it's something to show them that the community supports them. So that's something that you can do. At locations without a public campaign, however, do not do that. Do not do that. That would be weird. That would be weird. Rather, why would it be weird? Why is that ill-advised? Because if you go to a location that does not have an active union campaign, all you do by doing public messages of union support in front of their management is alert them to the possibility of a union campaign and give management a head start in trying to bust the union, and trying to do some anti-union propaganda type stuff. So, like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that if you are at a place without a public union campaign, because you don't want to bring pressure to the workers that they are not ready for. You want them to be inoculated about what the boss is going to say, what the boss is going to do, before they actually have to face that pressure, because that pressure is very scary, and we don't want them to have to face that before they are prepped, before they are ready for it. We want them to know what's coming, and we want them to make that decision to go into that pressure themselves. We don't want to make that decision for them, okay? So don't do that. Don't be publicly union at a place without a public union campaign. Instead, what the union has asked you do is quickly and quietly ask your barista if they have heard about what is going on, and if they're interested, give them the union's email, which is sbworkersunited@gmail.com. That is sbworkersunited@gmail.com. Give them that email, and don't do anything else different. And yeah, so that is straight from the union. Like, they have sent out a solidarity toolkit, and this is what. So I'm not going out on a limb and telling you best practices or what I think you should do. This is what I am relaying, what the Starbucks baristas themselves have asked for you to do. So this is a really good way to support them in the way that they want to be supported. Not everybody is happy about this, though, about Alabama baristas organizing their workplace like weird conservative uncles and libertarian debate bros. When I mentioned this on my Facebook, which I don't do often, I don't post to my Facebook often because Facebook is just really a dumpster fire, and people get their feelings hurt when you disagree with them, and it becomes this big public spectacle. And I just don't really do that very often. I just don't really do that very often. So, but I did this time. I just said, yeah, Starbucks workers are organizing. That's pretty cool. And like everything else that I post that is mildly political, people were like trying to debate me in the comments section, saying that, like, it was only 2 people, but still, saying that, okay, oh no, a downward spiral at Starbucks is about to begin, that workers, not union busting consultants or executives, are parasites, that unions, not politicians or trade deals, killed Detroit because they artificially priced labor so high that it is cheaper to ship entire cars from another country.
Wow. Okay.
And so that's what was happening on my Facebook page. It's bonkers. It's bonkers. These people are crazy. Like, I mean, first of all, the downward spiral began. Like, there's no evidence to suggest that workers being organized is going to give you a worse product. That just doesn't make sense. And in fact, we see the opposite in the trades. We see that UAW represented John Deere workers still make the best tractors in the country. And, the thing that people are going to point to most of the time is going to be the big 3 automakers. But, guess who makes production decisions at the big 3 automakers? It's not the workers. They don't choose the steel. They don't draw up the specs. They don't say what they're going to go through. They just produce the things that they're told to produce.
Yeah,
and so sometimes they produce crappy cars because that's the thing that they were given to produce.
Well, and it's just common sense as well that, Starbucks is like many service industry employers where it has extremely high turnover and, this rotating workforce might actually stay if they have a voice in their workplace, if collectively they can bargain a contract that has better pay and better benefits, better leave provisions, more reliable scheduling. Because, I know everyone loves to focus on wages and benefits, but it does go beyond that, including preventing unjust firings, as we're seeing Starbucks do across the country. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But if I have a voice in my workplace, if I have a method to, address my problems when problems arise, if I can see there's a future there because we have a collective bargaining process, I'm going to be more committed to the workplace. And I would imagine that's the experience that we're seeing from baristas across the country. And that's what they're telling us as well directly is, hey, it's not that we want to ruin Starbucks or take them down. No, we want to actually improve Starbucks and make it a better experience for everybody involved, including the customers.
Right. Adam, can you bring the phone line back up? Joe was trying to call in.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know what was happening with that, but I will do my best.
Yeah. Also, they and Joe, I figure you're probably still listening, so we're trying to get that phone line. And were you able to figure out what the deal was with the YouTube as far as not being able to hear the caller? Were you able to figure that out with Ben?
No, I'm not sure what that is about. So that's going to be one of those after the show. We're going to have to just do some troubleshooting.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, if you're still listening, if you want to come back down and see if we can't get Joe on the line. But yeah, and so another thing that he said was that, okay, so the reason that jobs have been outsourced is that unions artificially priced labor so high that it is cheaper to ship entire cars from another country, as opposed to trade deals that politicians push through incentivizing companies doing that.
I love the word artificial, as if there's a natural way for wages to be set, which of course they believe that the market and the whims of private capitalists is in fact the way the Lord ordained it. And is just the natural state of society.
Exactly. And like the idea that is the reason, going against the natural order, as opposed to as opposed to politicians drafting up trade deals and incentivizing outsourcing and the competition with countries who use what amounts to slave labor. Like, yeah, of course, you weird libertarian debate bro, it's going to be cheaper to manufacture a car if you make $1 an hour, as opposed to what you should be making, like $30, $40, $50 an hour. Like, obviously that's cheaper, but that's not good. That's not a good enough reason to accept that as the way that we run our society. It's just simply not. It's simply not. It doesn't make sense to say that, to say that, oh, because I can manufacture a car in Mexico where people are going to die on the line every single day, people make who knows how much, that's what we should do. That's what we should. Oh, you mean they use slaves in this country? Wow. It's amazing that American labor is pricing themselves out of it. Like, screw you, man. Screw you. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. And then the idea that workers are parasites, the people who are actually making the profits with which these consultants, these union-busting lawyers, and these executives are paid, the profits that they're paid from are coming from they're coming from the labor of the baristas in shops all across the country. The idea that they're the parasites instead of the people who don't do any valuable work at all. I mean, just get a grip, man. Get it, like, come back to reality, my guy.
I'm
total
just
brain rot.
Here's the thing. If you took a Starbucks and you took the CEO out of the equation, you took the manager out of the equation, but you still had all the baristas, you still had all the coffee growers, you still had all the truck drivers, you could still have some coffee.
Yep.
Reverse that scenario, you're not getting your damn coffee.
Exactly.
Without the workers, there is nothing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's you know, as William in the comments put, the brainwashing and propaganda does run incredibly deep. And we've seen, 4 decades now of this kind of obsession with the market and with, glorifying greed and trying to convince ordinary people to identify with their own oppressors and exploiters.
Yeah. We've got Joe on the line. Joe is a listener from Decatur. He is a former union president and former steelworkers president.
Longtime friend of the show.
Longtime friend of the show. Longtime listener. Joe, thanks for calling in. What's up, man?
Hey, Jacob. I just wanted to comment on the Tim James interview.
Yeah. What did you think about that?
Well, I don't think a whole lot of Republicans in the first place, but my comment is more along the lines as the nut probably don't fall too far from the tree. Back in the early 80s, we was on strike for 8 weeks. Daddy Fobb was the governor at the time. And of course, they was using state troopers to escort workers in and out of the mill. Sent about 200 state troopers out to the line one whole week. Now, I will admit that the natives was getting restless and the crowd was growing, union crowd, but they sent about 200 troopers out there, including a helicopter flying over us. They was complete riot gear, shotguns the whole 10 mile. So I don't know really what to think about Tim and what he would do for those workers at Brookwood, but I wouldn't take a whole lot of faith in it if I was a mine worker right now. I do like the fact that he did get on and bring a little attention to the problem down there, and maybe some of these politicians who's in office right now might pick up on it a little bit. But like I say, I hope the mine workers really take a hard look at any Republican first, but Tim and for governor, just his comment that he could solve it in one afternoon, just kind of falls back to me on Trump that I'm the only one that can fix this. But that's my comment. And I had one more thing. The lady Eve who was calling and complaining, if some of these folks would take their issues to the union hall, and they will get the floor, I'm pretty sure, and make it known what their complaints are. If they're not such trivial problems, I'm pretty sure they'll get addressed. But that's all I got, y'all. I appreciate it.
Hey, Joe, this is Adam here. I missed the first bit of your call. Could you just say briefly?
He said what he said about, he was talking about Tim James. He said that Fob James, when he was on strike, he sent 200 state troopers with riot gear and shotguns to break up y'all's picket line when y'all were on strike in the 90s. Is it right? Is that what you said, Joe?
In the 80s. It was in the 80s during Fob's term. But yes.
Okay.
Now,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, after 8 weeks of being on the picket line, and we didn't have no 2-man max that we could have out there. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, but we had probably 7 gates to man, 24/7. But folks was getting restless, and they wanted to see some action, so there was a call to action. Now, it wasn't a call for violence, but we did. We showed up in mass, probably 300 or 400 union members in the street, across the street, and the troopers was called in no time flat on us, like I say, including the helicopter,
Wow.
To make sure we didn't get out of hand. But they was also using them troopers to escort buses in and out with their workers that they brought in to try to run that mill. They wasn't very successful, but that's what I wanted to mention on that.
And what mill was that?
This was Cortland.
Okay.
Paper mill. In
That's
Cortland,
right. That's
Alabama.
right.
It was Champion Papers at the time. Now, but I will say this: after we did rally out there in the street for a 3 days, they was back to bargaining table really quick. Wasn't no time flat that we had an offer, and it was accepted. I ain't gonna say it was a great offer, but it was accepted.
Thank you so much for calling in and sharing that, Joe.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's some really good context. And I wish, that's a bummer. I wish if we get him back on, if I interview him again, like if he wins the primary, I'll probably try to get him on again, or if he goes into a runoff. And I'll see what he has to say about that. I would really be interested in his response.
But I love the local labor history.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the absolute truth. I mean, I was there. I was first-hand witness to it. I saw quite a few of our members go to jail that day, throwing a rock, getting a little too close to the troopers, just different things got them to jail. But in the end, the local bailed everybody out, and when it was time to go to court, all the charges was dropped. Nobody wound up getting fined or going to court or anything else. So all worked out in the long run. But I won't keep y'all guys. I may leave you a message on the line after the show's over. So something I wanted to mention from last week's show, but I ain't gonna hog it all up. So I'll get off here and get back to listening to you.
All right. Well, Joe, I think this is going to be it for us. I appreciate you calling in, and maybe we can talk about that other thing on next week's show. Appreciate you listening. Thanks for calling in.
All right. See y'all. Bye bye.
All right. Yeah, so folks, that's going to be it for us on the show today. We went a little bit longer than normal, but I think it was a good show.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it out there for anyone who is like Joe, who has some local labor history to share with us. If you've been in a strike in the past, if you had family members, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody who was involved in labor actions here in North Alabama in particular, that's something that we're both really interested in. We love to hear about, previous actions, because I think the labor history in Alabama has been dramatically suppressed in this state. And most folks don't know that we've had unions here in Alabama as long as there's been unions. And we've had strikes, we've had boycotts, we've had organizing campaigns, you name it. It's all happened right here in Alabama. In some cases, much more so than other places in the South.
Right.
So love to get that history and just want to put that call out there to anybody listening. If you have some local labor history, would love to hear about it. In particular, one thing I'm researching would be the Scottsboro teacher strike from about 40 years ago or so. I'm blanking on the year right now, but late 70s, early 80s. I know that's kind of in our neck of the woods, and I don't have a lot of sources on that yet, but if you know anyone out in the Scottsboro area who was involved in that, would love to hear from them. But really, anything like that, it's right up our alley.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so that's going to be it for us. We appreciate your time. If you would like to help us stay on the air or buy our new hat, as we're going out, let's show them that hat for a little bit. It's really cool, Adam. Or make a one-time or a recurring donation. You can do all that on our website, tvlr.fm. tvlr.fm. Share the stream, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, subscribe to our podcast, rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all these other places, and don't forget to review on your podcasting app of choice. Make sure you like the stream if you're listening to us live. If you would like to leave us a voicemail, like Joe is going to, share your thoughts on the contents of today's episode, ask us a question, share with us some local labor history, some ways that you are winning with your coworkers, a bad boss story, anything at all like that, leave us a message. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. 844-899-8857. Adam, did we have any plugs that you wanted to make sure that we got before we left?
Yes, I do have a couple of plugs, some from the past couple of weeks that I wanted to bring back up, and also a couple of new ones. So I want to start with the new ones first and make sure folks are aware of these opportunities. The first one I'm going to share is from our great friends, Labor Notes. They have a steward's workshop on grievance handling focused on the worst practices for grievances. And that is Thursday, April 21st. That'll be 7 o'clock Central Time online. The workshop will be led by veteran unionist and labor educator Richard DeVry from Teamsters Local 705. Going to look a little bit about mistakes, how you can learn from your mistakes in grievances, how to follow a grievance from beginning to end, looking at the investigations, the hearing, and how arbitration works. So that is like really practical nuts and bolts kind of information that if you are getting involved in a union or you are looking at maybe becoming a steward yourself or running for a union office, great opportunity. So check that out. More locally, there were 2 local events that I wanted to add to our plugs this week. First is from our friends at Alabama Rise. Some of you may know the Alabama Legislature's 2022 session just wrapped up on April 7th, and Alabama Rise is going to do a virtual debriefing on Tuesday, April 19th at 6 p.m. to share what happened during the session, as well as the next steps to keep moving the vision for a better Alabama forward. So again, that's Tuesday, April 19th, 6 o'clock. Go to Alabama Rise's website, alarise.org/2022 session wrap. You'll find a link to the Zoom. You'll get a confirmation email to let you know you're in there. So that should be really good. I'm interested in hearing kind of in one place what all happened with the session. We've been covering certain bills. There's things that they've covered that we haven't. So should be a good opportunity, and really respect what they do down in the State House. Yeah. And the other new local event I wanted to plug, also friends of the show, the United Women of Color Book Club. A lot of the people involved with the Citizens Coalition for Justice Reform here in Huntsville, who have been fighting the good fight against criminal injustice and fighting for police reform. So they're having a virtual meet and greet with Dr. Ed Bridges on April 26th, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. It's online. And they are actually going to be diving into Ed Bridges' book, Alabama, The Making of an American State. But you don't have to read the book to participate. You can just check it out online. And so Ed Bridges was actually the director of the Alabama Department of Archives and History for 30 years. And so that's kind of he is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the state of Alabama and how we got to where we're at. And we need to know that to know where we're going. So I appreciate that the United Women of Color is hosting that event. Should be really interesting and informative. That's April 26th, 6 p.m. You can check out United Women of Color's Facebook page if you want to get more information. And the last couple of things, we'll wrap it up here. Just a reminder, this afternoon is the Voter Services Drive that the League of Women Voters is doing. And that's at the North Huntsville Public Library on Sparkman. And we still are wanting to share the music for mechanics that is happening Sunday, April 24th at 1 p.m. through 8:30 p.m. That's the really cool event that's going to be at the Stove House here in Huntsville, live streaming by our friend Spice Radio here in Huntsville. And it is to benefit the free automotive clinic up here. So a great cause, great music, great food. If you have something, if you don't have anything going on that weekend, if you want to get out and about, if you want to check out some music or just, meet some activists and organizers and have some community, that sounds like a really great way to do that. And our friend Daniel Tate from Energy Alabama, just a reminder, he is going to be on a panel hosted by the League of Women Voters on the environment, specifically the climate crisis in Alabama, as well as renewable energy solutions. That is Tuesday, May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. So, a lot of really cool events coming up in the community. Several of them are online, so if you can't get out or don't want to get out, you can still participate. And if you or your organization has any events coming up that you think would be relevant to working class people here in this community, then just let us know, and we'll be happy to put the word out and try to share.
Yep.
Aside from that, I just want to wish everyone a happy Easter and a safe Easter, and way to go, Starbucks workers in Birmingham. Happy to see you in Alabama carrying the torch for us. So.
My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we will see you next week.